Electrifying sports talk from start to finish.
You're going wire to wire
With Diesel and Cole Bryson.
on the Fan Upstate.
Diesel, there's nothing better than busting a good old narrative, and that's exactly what we're going to do to start off the show. There are always narratives going into a college football season, as you can imagine. We wouldn't have anything else to talk about if there weren't, but we're going to bust 3 of them. I am, and I'm going to see if you agree or disagree with me. This is Wire to Wire. He's Diesel. I'm Cole Bryson, back and better than ever. My voice is raspy, though.
Yeah.
So you might have to carry, your back might be hurting, you might be carrying the load today, but it's good to be back.
I don't think I could do that, man. I had a late night last night. I was in Atlanta, rocking out to the 90s gods that are Limp Bizkit. Having a blast with that. We got about 5 hours sleep, drove all the way back to South Carolina to be here with you.
You know what was funny, and we'll get into the busting of the narratives in a second, but what's funny is you sent me that picture last night of Limp Bizkit concert, and I thought to myself, oh, I only know one Limp Bizkit song.
It's all about
why
he
is
said,
that?
She said, bull bleep.
And why do I only know one Limp Bizkit song, Diesel? Because our outro is Limp Bizkit.
Oh, I thought you knew Fate,
No,
the George Michael cover, because you're such a huge Wham fan.
No. If I listened to it, maybe I would. But no, it's the outro song that we play. That's the only one I know. And
Is
I like
it true
that
you're never going to dance again?
See, don't know that one either.
Your guilty feet have got no rhythm.
But we'll get into that. Apparently, Rob Brown had a 90s weekend as well.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that next. A huge show coming your way today. I have a new game that debuts today, and it's up to Diesel on how long this game goes. It could go 1 day. It could go 10 days. But the name of the game is called Carson Beck Versus. That's the name of the game. And we're going to do it at 5:45. We'll get back to that. I'll tell you how it works. But
Is this one of those games where the winning purse gets bigger and bigger the longer we go?
Maybe so. We might get it sponsored if it goes too long. But it might go 1 day. It might go 10. Okay. I don't think it goes more than 10, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Huge show, Landon Hallfield of Inside Texas. He has a show, and I don't believe he's been on this program yet, but he's going to join us later in the show as well. A big show coming your way. You can text the show anytime, 71307. Start your text with the word fan. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Diesel, the first narrative that I would like to bust in the 2024 college football season, and I cannot wait to hear if you agree or disagree with me here. But the narrative of Alabama taking a back seat, I am here to bust it with a sledgehammer, and I could be dead wrong when it's all said and done. But I like Kalen DeBoer. He's 104-12 as a head coach. I'm going to stand on it, stand with my sledgehammer. I'm going to bust this narrative. And on August the 5th, I'm going to claim it that I'm going to be right on this. We'll see if I'm actually right or not. But I do not think Alabama's taken a backseat to anyone. Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, I think Kalen DeBoer is a phenomenal head coach. And I don't think there's really anyone outside of maybe hiring Kirby Smart that could have been on par with Nick Saban. And Kirby Smart might be the only hire that Alabama fans would have been happy with, right? Kalen DeBoer has been excellent everywhere he's ever been. The one thing I do question, and this is something we just can't know until we see it, does Kalen DeBoer have the ability to focus his team week in and week out to deal with that gauntlet that is the SEC?
Yeah.
That's the biggest question mark going into the Kalen DeBoer era at Alabama. When you're coaching in the Pac-12 at Washington, you have some weeks off. You understand that Oregon State is kind of a week off. You understand that Arizona State is kind of a week off, which that hurts my heart because Arizona State has one of the coolest color combos and mascots anywhere in the country. I think they would be just lightning in a bottle, literally, if they could be an elite football program. They got a huge student body out there. But, when you're in the Pac-12, you can kind of breathe a little bit.
Sure.
You can't breathe in the SEC. So that's my biggest question mark for Kalen DeBoer.
And you know what? When I say that, I don't want to discredit what Nick Saban did because, in my opinion, and I believe you would agree, and I believe most people would agree, Nick Saban's the best. He's the best of all time. And we'll probably never see another Nick Saban. My point is, though, while Nick Saban was the GOAT, if there's anybody that I have to follow Nick Saban with, Kalen DeBoer's a pretty good candidate. And I also think, Diesel, that Kalen DeBoer, I don't want to say the table set perfectly, but man, what better situation could you come into than Alabama? They weren't having losing seasons. Yeah. It wasn't like Spurrier when he left South Carolina. The table's pretty much set. The napkins and there may be a little adjusting on the menu, but the table's set for DeBoer, and I think that's a big part of it.
I got to imagine if you are coaching at Washington, there are still some very small things that are not to your liking, things that you wish you had that you don't have. Now, Washington, they were making a lot of money in the Pac-12. They weren't cash strapped by any means. They were clearly good enough and had the recruiting operating on a point where they could get into the college football playoff. But they didn't exactly have Oregon money, right? Because only a handful of programs have that kind of money. I'm talking about Oregon, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia. They got that kind of money. Ohio State, Michigan, they got that kind of cash. Everybody else is probably still pinching a little pennies here and there, even if you're in the SEC, right? So now that he's got everything he could possibly want, what is he going to do with it? Does he now have the nicer, newer jet that could get him from place to place a little bit faster, that kind of thing? I mean, all these little amenities that he's never had, that he didn't have at Washington, can they sustain him and keep him at that tippy top level?
So let's look at the 2023 schedule for Washington. You brought it up, and I think it's a very fascinating point of this conversation when you talk about what Kalen DeBoer had at Washington. Again, he is and was elite. We're not discrediting that, but I do agree with you that Washington's schedule's a different beast. 104-12 as a head coach, that's nothing to shake a stick at. But when you talk about Boise State, Tulsa, they did play Michigan State. Michigan State hadn't been good in a while, right? California, Arizona, Diesel, the first 5 games of 2023 last year. Do you see a team, and the Arizona game was close, Arizona's not bad, but do you see a team in there in those first 5, again, Boise State, Tulsa, Michigan State, California, and Arizona, that are remotely close to what they'll open up with in the SEC?
No, Arizona was a good football team last year. They were 10-3. They were a pretty good football team. However, they did lose at Mississippi State week 2 of the season, 31-24, overtime. You know, if you want to be an elite program, you got to be beating the bottom half of the SEC. When you're playing Mississippi State, you're Arizona, you want to be taken seriously. You can't lose those kinds of games. It's one thing to do it against your peers in the Pac-12. It's another thing once you start going up against other programs from other conferences and showing that you are better than them. I mean, they played Oklahoma in the Valero Alamo Bowl, won that game 38-24, but with bowl games, you never really know what you got because a lot of these teams have opt-outs and players leaving the program. So I don't put a ton of stock in that. Arizona is a good opponent last year, but certainly not one that commands a lot of national respect. And you're right, they had to go all the way to October 14th to play a really good football team.
And then after that, the next week, you play Arizona State, who's not a good football team, a decent team, not a good football team. You won 15-7. You beat Stanford by 9. You escaped USC. You allowed 42 points at USC. You did win. You put up 52. They put up 42. You beat Utah by a touchdown, Oregon State by 2. I mean, look how many close games. Washington State by 3.
That was a weird schedule for them. Man. I mean, look at what they did before the bye.
Yeah.
They blew the doors off of Boise State, Tulsa, Michigan State, Cal, and then all of a sudden they stopped winning by 100 in every game, right? Yeah, exactly. It was one touchdown win on the road at Arizona. I get it. Good football team. But after that, they squeaked by basically everybody else on their schedule.
So Alabama, again, to recap, if you just tuned in, will they be the same as that they were under Nick Saban? Will they replicate the dynasty that they had? I'm not saying that. I just don't think Alabama's taking a back seat to anyone, even though Georgia's stacked, and I get that. Georgia right now, they're on a dynasty tear, like a Nick Saban kind of run that he had at Alabama, especially if they were to win 3 or 4 Diesel, which would be incredible.
Well, by the definition of them not making the college football playoff last year, doesn't that officially end the Georgia dynasty?
Well, to some, not to me. Not to me.
Don't say that in Athens. You might not make it out of town.
That's true. So I'm going to bust that first narrative. Alabama, I don't think they're taking a back seat. It would not surprise me one bit to see them in the top 4 when it's all said and done this year. Georgia's the game that on their schedule, obviously, that scares me a lot. And they have some other tough games. But I just don't think they're taking a back seat. I do trust Kalen DeBoer. He's proven it. He's been to other schools, other stops where he has been nothing but consistent. So I like Alabama to continue. I'm not saying they have another dynasty, but I just don't think they're taking a back seat anytime soon. My second one, Diesel, and this one's tough for me. But the narrative that Brent Venables, I've been reading a lot of Oklahoma beat writer, Oklahoma Sooner website stuff. The narrative that Brent Venables all of a sudden is a little bit safer now because he has a tough SEC schedule, and they understand that. I'm here to bust that completely, and I even go the opposite. I'd say there's more pressure on Brent Venables to win now than ever.
Yeah, did the extremely hard strength of schedule save Will Muschamp from getting fired at Florida or South Carolina? No. Did the has the extremely hard strength of schedule kept Vanderbilt head coaches from being fired? No. So that narrative is completely bunk. It may extend a coach's opportunity as a new team coming into the SEC. So maybe it gives Brent Venables, assuming things don't go well, right? Maybe it gives Brent Venables another year and a half tops to get things back on track by saying, man, you're playing in a really tough. Yeah, we're playing in a tough conference. We had a lot of work to do with the players that we needed to be successful in this conference. I mean, it's odd when you do see a team come into a new league and just crush it. It's weird. It's exciting, but it's not the norm.
If you think that there are media members in South Carolina and in the upstate in particular that are biased, don't go read Oklahoma reports for 2024 and predictions, because that's what I was doing. And I really didn't, Diesel, I had no intentions of putting this on my narrative of being busted, because I have 3. This is number 2. But until I read these predictions and analysis, My mind was blown. I could not believe that so many media members in Oklahoma thought that all of a sudden you get into the SEC and, oh, it's okay. The schedule's a lot harder. I will say this, to your point, does it allow him a little more time? Maybe. However, I don't think Oklahoma, Diesel, is in a wait-and-see kind of period. Like,
No,
they have to win.
no, they
Lincoln
know.
Riley, they left it. He left it pretty much. I don't want to say like Spurrier did, but it was bad.
Well, Oklahoma knows if they don't win immediately in the SEC, they fall behind, and they know, they have smart enough people over there to understand that if you fall behind in the SEC and you're seen as a second-tier program in the SEC, it's going to be way harder to dig out of that hole. So they know that a fast start is imperative, and they also know that they can't afford to get too far behind. So Oklahoma, like I said, they may give Brent Venables another year to get it figured out, but that might be all the extra leash he gets. At that point, you're in the SEC now. If you can't win in the SEC, we don't need you. Get the hell out. We'll find somebody else who can.
See, I think when you join the SEC, the pressure does not soften. The pressure all of a sudden just cranks up. And to your point, you got to win now. There's no time to say, hey, well, you're good for a few years. You're in a new conference. No, you've got more money, more exposure, more athletes coming to you. You better win now. And I like Brent Venables a lot, but he's got to win. 2 years from now, if they haven't made a drastic jump, a drastic improvement, I don't know that Brent Venables will be there in 2 years.
Yeah, that's going to be the fascinating thing. I've said, as you bring two really good programs into this conference, they are both very proud fan bases that are used to winning 10, 11 games a year. And that's going to be one of the things that these tippy-top programs in the SEC and their fan bases have to get used to, because you're now playing in a tougher conference. So, the question is, will parity start to happen in the SEC? Meaning, like, every team is going to have to get used to losing one or two more games per season than they have been? Or will we see what we kind of have always seen in sports, that the cream will rise to the top, right? That the elite of the elite programs will rise to the top. But then again, as we're going to get into later on in the show, Cole, there are people out there who are now looking at potentially 3 mulligans for some of the best teams in the SEC. You could now lose 3 games in the SEC and still make the college football playoff
because of the expanded playoff.
Because of the expanded playoff. So you're going to see fans who are going to have to get used to, like, all they know is 10-win seasons. All they know is 11-win seasons, and they're going to start seeing the number 9 show up. They're going to see the number 8 show up in the win column, and you're going to have a better football team, and you're going to be making college football playoffs. But you're not going to feel quite as good about your seasons anymore because you got to get used to some more losses.
So my first busting that I did, my first narrative that I busted, let me put it that way, but the first narrative that I busted today was Alabama taking a back seat. I bust that one. I don't think they're taking a back seat. My second one, Brent Venables being safe at Oklahoma now all of a sudden because he's in a tougher conference. That's definitely getting busted. He's in win now mode. Oklahoma's got to win now. My third narrative that I'm busting, Diesel, it's going to upset one of our Tolos who listens more than ever, but I've got to tell you, we've got a severe weather alert. Miami, Florida, wherever you are, that tropical storm Debbie that's coming through right now, guess what? That's going to be the only thing coming through that's worth a crap. I'm not buying the Miami stock. I don't think the Hurricanes are going to be legit. They might win 9 games. They might win 10 games. But I'm here to tell you, I'm not buying the severe weather warning that's playing right now because the Miami Hurricanes, we've heard it once, we've heard it 1,000 times, they're back. Diesel, you agree or disagree with me there?
I 100% agree with you, busting this narrative. Miami has earned a special place of those programs who always think they're back, who are never actually back. Now, remember a couple of years ago when Texas and their quarterback was saying, we're back. We're back. Now, Texas is back.
They are.
Miami, you're still in prove it mode. You're still in I'm back purgatory mode. You've got to show us. You've got to be elite. Like, Miami is one of those programs that starts out hot and then they fade. They have that big name. Notre Dame is in the same
Mhm.
situation. Notre Dame always has this early season high ranking, and then they fall by the end of the season, or they get into the playoff and they get their asses totally kicked. Miami not getting into the playoffs, so you're a rung below Notre Dame, as a matter of fact.
Diesel, listen to what Alex Dono said, writer and Locked On Kings podcast host. He has them going 10-2, which, again, the schedule, it might set up for them to win 9 or 10 games. Alex says this is the deepest Miami Hurricanes football team that I've ever covered in the past decade. Transfer quarterback Cam Ward arrives with high expectations, named ACC preseason player of the year. We know that. The Hurricanes have the most productive returning group of wide receivers in the ACC, arguably the best running back room in the conference. Miami's sheer size and strength on the offense and defensive line will put them in a position to impose their will on opponents. The schedule is manageable. The Hurricanes avoid Clemson. They avoid NC State, which, to Alex's point, those are big. You avoid those two, it's big. They have Florida to open up. Then they have Florida A&M, Ball State, USF, Virginia Tech, and Cal. In the first 6 weeks, Diesel, they're not going to be tested. Florida may test them at times, but that's the only game really that they're going to be tested all year other than October 26th at Florida State. Or, home against Florida State.
Yeah, this is good. This is interesting to see, is that narrative that the programs that are in the biggest cities and have the flashiest names and have the most NIL money are going to be able to go out there and buy the best players that get them wins. You look at the average NIL valuations, Miami's not in the top 5. It goes Texas A&M, Michigan, Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama. Those are the teams that are getting the most value for their NIL. Those are the teams that are actually winning things because they're getting the best players with NIL. Miami is yet to show us that. So, this is Miami. This is they buy players. Everybody knows Devin Shapiro buying players, right? So, this may dispel the rumor that just because you have the most NIL money, you're going to be able to go out and buy championships. You still have to have the right people in place to go out there and coach these guys and win you football games. Just putting the best talent around you and getting them there with money and cars and jewelry and whatever is not necessarily going to get you where you want to be.
So I know we have to run, but real quick, looking at their schedule, Diesel, this might be with the expanded playoff team. I see 1 loss, maybe 2 for Miami's schedule. Now, I'm busting the narrative that they're back, but again, if you remember, I just told you a couple of minutes ago, they avoid Clemson, they avoid NC State. Mm-hmm. If both of them were on the schedule, I'd say Miami has 3 losses for sure, maybe 4, but because they don't play Clemson or NC State, they have 1, maybe 2. Do you see Florida beating Miami?
No.
I don't either.
Miami proves it to me that they're back if they make the college football playoff and win a game.
That's right.
They've
got to win a game.
Now just making the college football playoff, it sounds weird to say this. It's not such a huge accomplishment as it has been in the past. You still have to have a fantastic football season. You also now that we know that there's 7 at-large spots available, Miami doesn't necessarily seem set up to get into the ACC championship game and win it and get into that way. But you've now got to show that you are better than SEC programs and steal an at-large bid away from them.
And that's what I'm saying with this schedule. And I agree with you. It's still impressive to win and get into the playoff, but this schedule, if you don't get into the playoff with this schedule,
they've got to maul people this year. Yeah. We saw it last year with Florida State not getting in, even with an undefeated regular season schedule. They've got to maul people.
Sure.
They've got to win every game by 30 if they want to ensure that they get in. And then, and prove to me that they're back. You got to get in. You got to win. That's what it takes. When we come back, Cole, we're going to take a look at Rob Brown's past week.
Oh, yeah.
Going to see Creed. And my night last night going to see Limp Bizkit and debate who had the more 90s bro weekend, myself or Rob Brown. That's next on the Fan Upstate. Cole, I believe that music is the closest thing we have to a time machine because it takes you right back to where you were when you were first hearing it, when you were a big fan of it, and it brings all the people back out to come see it when it's played live.
Yeah.
And they dress the way they did 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I mean, they basically come in costume. And I got a full reminder of the Limp Bizkit new metal culture last night in Atlanta, Alpharetta, up at the Ameris Bank Amphitheater. Phenomenal venue.
What was your costume, by the way?
A black T-shirt.
Okay.
And I mean that's the costume of my people. Okay.
Gotcha.
Metalheads. We all just rock black. If you're wearing black, you're probably okay.
That's easy though. I like it.
But man, I saw exposed boobies last night. I saw piercings and chains connecting them together at the show last night. I saw Jinkos. I saw somebody rocking like 4 chain wallets with their nails painted black and face paint. Man, it was great. It was great. It took me right back to like 2002 when Limp Bizkit and Fred Durst ruled the music world. It was so good.
Does Diesel own a chain wallet, by the way?
I used to own multiple. It's probably.
I would love to see. I'd love to see you walk in one day. I mean, that'd be incredible.
I never owned Jinkos. Couldn't afford them. I couldn't afford them because they were really like 3 pairs of pants in one. 3 pairs of pants in one. No, man, it was just a phenomenal job by the band.
I'm impressed that you're here.
Yeah.
After being in Atlanta last night, that's what I'm impressed about.
Yeah. So, after pre-gaming and having a couple of tall boys inside the venue, which for God's sakes, venue prices.
Dinero. What you spend? A lot.
Yeah.
Too
So
much?
luckily we had rewards on the hotel room.
That's good.
And we didn't pay for that, but we definitely didn't save any money because we spent over $120 in beers, and we only got 3 beers each. We only got 3 beers
easy.
each. So you're talking, you go get 2 beers. Granted, they're tall boys.
Yeah,
but they're $20 a pop. Unbelievable.
I was going to guess 12. Way off on that.
Yeah,
that's
a high gravity tall boy. You getting a smidge of your money's worth back on that. $20. Like I said, I went and I pulled the card out and actually paid attention one time when I tapped the card to pay for the beers, and he turned the thing around and said $44. I was like, not again. I'm done. I'm done drinking beers.
Imagine how much they're making.
Oh my God.
How much profit?
Oh my God.
That's sickening. That makes me sick. I didn't even spend the money.
So we all heard. We all heard how excited Rob Brown was for his Creed show. He was talking about going full Florida man at Creed. And I don't know. I don't know if Rob Brown has he even made it back to work since that happened.
Was this the one that they had rain?
Yeah, this is the one they.
So it didn't get rained out.
No, it didn't. It didn't get rained out. They only Creed played at that show, so maybe Rob didn't have the time to go full Florida man the way that he did.
Yeah.
But last night, man. Limp Bizkit kind of was in the same scenario because we had heavy rain roll through the area, push things back. Unfortunately, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, we did not get to see Corey Feldman of the Goonies. You ever seen Goonies, right?
Yeah.
Goonies.
Oh, yeah, great.
You remember he was Mouth, the one that like hit all the jewels in his mouth, and they pulled like a whole string of pearls out of his mouth.
God, that's a good movie. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, his set was axed because this was the strangest lineup of bands that I've ever seen before. They were calling it the Loserville Tour. They kept getting on the PA and calling the whole crowd a bunch of losers.
Wow.
There was an overweight, chunky dude in a rainbow sequined jumpsuit traveling throughout the crowd, getting people to talk on the microphones. It was the weirdest. There was a hip hop artist there that I'd never heard of called Bones doing his set, and then they brought out a TikTok star named Riff Raff. If you know who that is, apparently he got famous like 10 years ago for having a grill that was like spiked, like jagged teeth, like shark teeth. And he was like, I want to get really famous so that I can pretend I don't know nobody.
Let me ask you this question. You went to Limp Bizkit, Rob went to Creed.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to pick one of the two for just a guy that doesn't listen to either type of music, Like me. Let's use me for example, because I don't listen to them, right? If you had to say, okay, I'm going to pick one of the two for you to go enjoy it, have a good time, and like be able to say when you leave, yeah, you know what? I enjoyed that more than I thought.
That's the hard question here, because both, you wouldn't expect both to bring out the same group of kind of trashy people. You wouldn't think like, so Creed is a 90s rock band. They were more of the religious ilk of rock band, but you still had Scott Stapp, who would go out there and like get himself all jacked up and then take his shirt off, and like so some of Scott Stapp's actions didn't necessarily match the message that they were trying to preach. And obviously he had his issues a couple of years ago where he got pretty messed up, and he definitely was not of the religious type. But Limp Bizkit just leans into it, man. Like they lean into being trashy, they lean into being weird and quirky and sort of a little bit cringy. That's the question. Like, do you want your band to be honest about what they are?
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you want the band to pretend to be kind of straight-laced and religious and positive message, but then, whip shirts off and stuff like that? Or do you want the band that leans into it and just has fun with it, has a blast with it?
No, I don't want them to be pretending they're something that they're not, for sure. But just from the music standpoint, and maybe this is what I need to do. Maybe I need to go listen to 3, 4, 5 songs.
Put it this way. There's a lot more cursing in Limp Bizkit.
Okay.
If you don't mind that kind of stuff.
Well, Madcraft says Creed. Madcraft says Creed, Cole. Creed twice. He wanted to make sure. He told me. Creed. I don't know.
I'm trying to dance around calling Limp Bizkit a white trash band, but they kind of are.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. And you know what? They lean into it.
But listen.
The fans lean into it. They realize what they're like. They're like this close to being juggalos.
It's like I told you. The
Insane Clown Posse fans.
The only Limp Bizkit song that I know, and no, the show's not coming to an end, but this is the only one that I know. And it sounds good. Did they play this last night?
Yeah, they did.
It's called Rolling.
Rolling. What?
But there are words eventually, right?
There are words.
Okay. But not on ours.
Yeah, well, that's so we can't play the whole song on that because it's like,
gotcha.
Fred Durst brings a kid up onto the stage and he's going to sing a song because the kid has a sign that says, "Can I sing break stuff with you?" And he's like 9, and he gets the kid on stage and he goes, now, mom and dad are over here. He's like, you know how dirty the words to the song are, right?
The kid wanted to sing it?
Are you okay? Would you let your kid sing it? And they said, yep, go ahead. Go ahead. I mean, there's like F and this and blank all over the song.
Wow.
They didn't care. They didn't. Wow. I mean, think about that.
Well, the kid's there already.
Yeah. The kid already knows the words. Just singing them into a microphone is not going to corrupt him all of a sudden.
Right.
Yeah. It was so much fun, man. I've been talking about seeing Limp Bizkit in 2015 at Carolina Rebellion since 2015. Like, it's one of the most fun shows I've ever been to. And I've seen them a couple of times. But it's one of the most fun shows I've ever been to. And it's like, like rock music in general is getting a little stale. It's like the throwback bands are the ones that bring the people out.
Madcraft says it's not that I dislike Limp Bizkit. It's just that I desire the crowd. I despise the crowd they pull. God. JB on the stream. Is that formerly JB, formerly Spur Daddy?
I don't know.
I think it is.
Did he
change his name?
Limp Bizkit definitely attracts. They definitely write music for people who would steal your catalytic converter.
God, that's got to be a promo. Stealing your. Let's see. Texter from the 441 says, "I would erase Creed from all of history to keep Limp Bizkit."
Yeah.
How about that? Corn Chip says,
I feel like that's one of those bands that's like this close to having a resurgence. They just need one hit song and they would blow up all over again.
Corn Chip says, "I blew my budget for tickets alone to see Green Day in Atlanta. No concert."
Nice.
Is Green Day and Creed, that would be similar, right? Similar.
No, not even close. No.
Really?
Creed is what, I didn't coin this term. Don't put this on me. Creed, I think, are tippy tops in a category of rock music called butt rock.
Oh, wow.
And it's not butt referring to somebody's posterior.
Yeah.
They call it butt rock because it's the music that the radio stations who say we play nothing but rock.
Oh, but
that they play, right?
Yeah.
Even though really people are just saying that music is butt. I can't say the other word
sure
in this context.
Sure.
But Green Day, of course, Green Day is just a punk band. They're a
Gotcha.
California punk band.
Yeah.
Very different kind of
Shows how
very
much
different.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Shows how much I know.
I mean,
so
Fred Durst is one of the last great American rock stars. Let's be real. He's one of the last great American rock stars. One of those people that is larger than life, transcends the music, and then people actually care about what's going on in his personal life.
So he's saying that you had the better weekend than Rob?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I dare Rob Brown to call in and tell me that he had a better time at Creed than I had at Limp Bizkit. Can't be done.
And probably the size of the crowd wasn't comparable either, was it?
The venue last night was, for what I could tell, basically sold out, and I think that venue holds about 12,000 people.
Wow, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Whereas Creed was at CCNB, and that one holds about 15,000. Yeah, I don't know how packed it was.
Yeah.
Weather certainly played a factor at the Creed show.
All right, Sharon Moore, Diesel, he may be in a little bit of hot water, a little sign stealing scandal. I love scandals, especially when it comes to sign stealing. We'll get into it next.
in your court. Sound off.
Diesel, this one's one I haven't seen before. This is a scandal that we'll dive into. We'll tell the audience about. We'll give our opinion, but
this is one of those stories that's filled with FCC violations and things that we cannot say over the air.
That's right. So when it comes to the deleted text of the coach, you go look them up. You go find them. You go read all about them, because we're not gonna. Like Diesel said, committed FCC violation.
I'll read them, but I'm going to have to replace a lot of words with expletive deleted.
A lot of words. A lot. So basically, just to kind of catch you up, if you don't know what's going on, Sherrone Moore is in hot water over Michigan football's sign-stealing scandal. Sherrone Moore is the latest staffer to be drawn into the program's sign-stealing scandal. As you know, there was a documentary that just the trailer came out for today, and this is a little bit more than a scandal, if you will. He might be the next coach to face discipline by the NCAA. I'm surprised after what I've heard. I cannot believe he has not faced any discipline yet, but he could face suspension and show cause penalty for allegedly deleting 52 text messages with former Wolverines analyst Connor Stalions, a level 2 violation, Diesel. On the same day in October, media reports indicated Stalions was the man behind an illegal off-the-field sign-stealing operation.
So all of this is going to open up a whole new layer of investigations against Michigan. But why in the ever-loving H did Michigan not vet any of this?
This is weird.
I mean, look. When Sherrone Moore coached from the sidelines and while Jim Harbaugh was up in the booth, they're not allowed in the stadium, and he cried, and we were all like, oh, my God, it's so heartwarming that he has this connection with his coach. Great.
It was weird.
We all laughed and said it's weird, but we also said, wow, it's great that he has such a strong bond with his head coach, right? And then Jim Harbaugh leaves Michigan. Gets out of Dodge before the bleep really hits the fan. Mm-hmm. And then Sherrone Moore gets the job, and we're all like, isn't this great? This is a guy who loves Michigan so much that it brought him to tears. Isn't this the guy that we want leading every program?
Well, the problem is, Diesel, before you get to those texts, the only way Michigan could have avoided this is completely clean house, hire a head coach from the outside, because Moore is only one of 7 staffers from Michigan's 2023 national championship team, Diesel, that was accused of violating those NCAA rules, according to a draft of the NCAA's notice of allegations. ESPN obtained that draft, which is subject to change, but I want to read this comment from Shane Barrett on the stream. Before you read the text, Diesel, Shane, for the those that remember, Shane had to be dumped a few months back for using some explicitives, if you will. And Shane says on YouTube, "Do you need me to read the text?"
Well played, Shane.
Well played there.
Well
like
played.
That. So here we go. You can read like the and.
Yeah,
before.
Yeah. This is rough. Okay, so not only is Sherrone Moore really caught up in the cheating scandal and scouting reports being sent over to staffers, he is also one of, if true, allegedly, one of the creepiest, most disgusting dudes I've ever seen put on blast like this. Like, you ever see women put their screenshots whenever dudes send really nasty things to them? And they'll screenshot it now and put it out there on the internet and say, hey, look at this guy. Look at this guy. This is this dude. He's married. He's got a Bible verse in his Twitter bio, and he's sending me awful, repugnant things to my DMs.
Yeah.
That allegedly is the kind of guy that Sherrone Moore is. Allegedly. Again, I say allegedly because we don't know for sure, and basically anything out there can get fake. These, I guess, are part of the 50-plus text message threads that were deleted with Connor Stalions.
50 plus.
But this is what it appears to be. Connor Stallions. So this is a screenshot of some messages between Connor Stallions and Sharon Moore. Connor sent him the MSU, I would assume Michigan State, scouting report. Sharon replied, "I'll look later. I'm low-key in my bed. Expletive deleted. My expletive deleted. LMAO." And Connor replies, "You thinking about me or Jim?" Question mark.
Jeez.
He says, "You." Shh emoji. He also says, "Wanna Mel Tucker again?" LOL. Winky face.
Diesel.
My expletive deleted is expletive deleted.
Yeah.
I can't even insinuate what it is that Sharon Moore allegedly sent to Connor Stallions.
So how does this dude still have a head coaching job is what I want to know. I mean, really?
Like Sharon Moore, I'm shocked that he was not fired this morning as this news started to break.
Right.
I'm shocked.
And what's crazy is I've said on this show several months ago that I didn't think Michigan's train would stop rolling just because Harbaugh left. But, like, imagine if Moore and the other staffers, I know this won't happen, but imagine if 2 weeks before the season started, they cleaned house. Can you ever imagine something that's happened that magnitude?
Have you ever seen, like, remember when you were a kid and you would watch the cartoons, like the old cartoons that would have like a train in the cartoon and they would always go hit a brick wall and just crash and derail. I think Jim Harbaugh jumped off the train before it hit the wall.
Yeah.
And then Sharon Moore, like, it's 2024, bro.
God.
I'm going to look right into the camera to everybody who's watching. Nothing ever gets deleted. Ever. Anything you say on social media, anything you text somebody is out there in the cloud. It is all recoverable.
Yeah.
And first of all, like, I'm shocked. I know Sharon Moore, wanted this job more than anything in the world. But why would you accept the job when you know that you're this deep embroiled in
That's
this
tough.
thing?
That's tough.
So bad.
I can't imagine what Michigan right now is.
So bad.
How do you make a decision? I mean, they've got to do something.
I think you got to fire him just to distance
Save
yourself
face?
from this whole thing.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
I
rough.
think you do. When we come back, Cole, the Olympics, you've been out of the country for a majority of the Olympic Games thus far.
Yep.
First of all, I want to get your perspective on how the people of Nicaragua are consuming the Olympics, or if they're consumed in it. And I want to ask the Tolos, what event thus far has just enthralled you the most? We'll get to that next. Right here on 97.7 FM in Greenville, 97.1 in Spartanburg, and everywhere you are on the free Odyssey app. The opening Sunday of the Paris Olympics competition, Cole, averaged 41.5 million viewers.
Woo.
The world is enthralled.
That's a lot.
With the Paris Olympics. I mean, you got the benefit of having a beautiful backdrop, a beautiful venue, but I don't think a lot of people tune in just for like pretty photos of Paris. You can Google that at any time, right? I mean, there's a reason why when you're doing radio, they say, hey, don't waste time doing the time and temp, because if people want to know the weather, they just go on their phones and look it up. People can do that stuff themselves. But the Olympics have been just massively popular.
So does that mean I was the only person in the world that didn't watch? I mean,
you might be.
You just named a huge number.
You have an excuse, Cole, that you were out of the country. You were not near your television. You were not, bought in completely.
Sure.
And also, you were in a country that probably doesn't give two bleeps about the Olympics, because Nicaragua has exactly 0 medals in these Olympics.
Come on, man.
0 gold, 0
Not
silver,
one?
0 bronze. 66 countries, Cole, have tallied medals in these Olympics. Even Slovakia has a bronze, but Nicaragua's got nothing.
So I was not in a part of the country, and there are some parts, Diesel, there are some parts of Nicaragua that have a little bit more money, if you put it frank. The part that I was in was a very, 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 very dirt poor part, right? So we went to one place that I can recall the entire 8 days that I was there that had a television with the Olympics on. I don't know how.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know how much they cared or paid attention. But again,
do you think people back in the bush where you were are even aware that the Olympics are going on?
I don't think so, because we were most of the part of the country we were in was very, very rural, like you said, way back in the bush. We were 5 miles from the Pacific Ocean. And no, the majority of them where we were don't even have phones, running water. It's pretty rough where we were in terms of living conditions. So I'd go out on a limb and say they do not even know the Olympics were going on.
I was trying to find out how many events Nicaragua even has athletes competing in, because that's one of the big reasons, obviously, why America almost always wins the most number of medals total and most number of golds, because number one, we're competing in damn near everything.
It's true.
Number two, we've got the money in the budget to fund every Olympic program, basically give them whatever they want, right? And that's not the same for every country.
And I guess a lot of those countries as well, to your point, how many of them had the money and resources not to get them there in the first place, but also for that person to have specialized in that sport their entire life. Well,
and there are certainly small Caribbean nations that do really well, especially in track and field. Like the Jamaicans are always so good at the track and field events, and the 4x400. No, not the 4x400. There was a sprint where a St. Lucia runner beat out the American runner that everybody was expecting would win this thing. And I'm just thinking, man, like St. Lucia's tiny. It's a teeny tiny country. I mean, obviously they have a lot more of a tourist industry than the Nicaragua has.
Yeah.
And so they've got, number one, they've got a lot of Western influence on their country. Number two, they've got a lot of tourism money coming into their country that Nicaragua doesn't necessarily have. And number three, they've just learned to specialize in a couple of events. You don't have to go out there and try to compete in all. I don't even know how many events are at the Olympics. 200 plus games.
Do you have a list of the countries in front of you that have won a medal? Or what were you saying a minute ago? Because I was just curious, when you talk about the country that I was in Nicaragua, that's considered Central America.
Mm-hmm.
And I just am curious, and I might have to go back and look.
Have any other Central American countries won any medals?
You've got Costa Rica.
Yeah, so
Honduras.
I'm gonna scroll up from the bottom. This is the least number of medals won. Cuba has a bronze. Cape Verde, I don't know if that's in South America or if that's in Africa, but they've got 1 medal. Dominican Republic has 2. Let's see. Scrolling up.
Cuba and Dominican Republic are the only ones so far.
Colombia has a silver medal in these Olympics.
And I don't think Colombia is Central. I think Colombia is South America.
Okay.
I'm not the best in geography though, so don't quote me on that.
I'm just trying to paint with a broad brush here. Mexico has 3 medals, two silvers and a bronze. St. Lucia has a gold, as we were just saying. Ecuador has a gold. Dominica has a gold. Chile, Argentina both have golds, 1 each. Guatemala has won 2 medals, 1 gold, 1 bronze. Doesn't tell me what events these are in, by the way. And then we start going up and up, and I'm trying to find any more South American or Central American countries.
Man, that's not a lot.
Brazil has 11 total medals, but Brazil is the biggest country in South America, right? So, and they have
Central America is not big. I mean, Central America has 9 countries.
Yeah. So you got Brazil at 11 medals. You scroll all the way down to, where was it? Guatemala, that's got 2. And then after that, I mean, most of these countries are winning 2 or 1 or none.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But I've been enthralled, and I love tuning in and watching the events that I didn't necessarily expect to see. I mean, there's always new events being added to the Olympics. There's events being taken away. Like, if you're not super into it, you may say, oh, I didn't realize that skateboard freestyle is in the Olympics now.
Didn't realize it. Had no idea.
And I discovered a new event. Like, obviously, we have the U.S. National Whitewater Center just up the road, just outside of Charlotte.
Yeah.
Love that place.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the Olympic athletes train. And one event, Cole, that I saw just this morning, I was glued onto it. My wife's like, "Come on, we gotta get dressed. You gotta go.
Yeah.
We gotta get out of here." But they were showing kayak cross, which is kayak racing. There's like 4 kayakers. This is nuts. Like just the first part of this event, I know I would fail at just the very first part of this. They drop 30 feet from a platform. They're sitting on a sloped downward platform in a kayak, ready to race, a 4-person race. And they got to drop 30 feet into the water.
That's a big drop.
Yeah.
That's a big drop. And you have to stay in the kayak, right? That's the whole goal, to stay in it.
So they're going down this man-made course, and there's these huge, like, these grandstands that are probably filled with potentially 5,000 spectators watching this thing in front of a man-made whitewater setup, which is much like what they have at the Whitewater Center.
Sure.
They've got to there's one like really low area, like where there's something hanging over the river, and they've got to do a flip and go underneath this thing, and then they've got to go through gates, and they've got to go around gates. I was absolutely enthralled watching this, because I've seen some of the kayaking events before, and they're always just kind of like, you're kind of paddling down this river by yourself and you're racing for time. But I want to see head-to-head competition, right? I don't want to see time trials. I want to see, which to me feels like qualifying. I want to see actual head-to-head beating and banging on each other at trying to win this race.
So the ones that I saw while I had limited cell service, and I didn't really keep up with it much because of that. The ones that I were enthralled by, Diesel, though, I did not know we had pistol shooting, and I did not know we had skeet shooting in the Olympics. I'm all for that.
The shooting sports have been in there for a long time.
Think I'd know that. But again, shows you how much I watch the Olympics, right? Shows you how much I care. And again, I've said this multiple times on this show. I'm not a Mr. Olympics kind of guy. I don't get excited about it. You would be very mad at me if you asked me this weekend how much Olympics I watched, because I tell you, it wasn't a lot. I keep up with it, follow it, obviously. But you know what? If you told me that I could sit down and watch 2.5 hours of skeet shooting and pistol shooting, so sign me up.
So the money that's being spent on these Olympics are record-breaking. They've NBC reported that they have $1.25 billion in sponsorship and marketing money committed.
Say that number
to
again.
$1.25 billion. A tremendous amount of money. The ratings are really, really high. Obviously, in 2021, we were all dealing with COVID. It obviously hit us most in 2020, and that moved the Olympics back by a year. But we were all still dealing with that. We were all kind of still reeling from that, right?
Sure.
And obviously with all the restrictions, it made things harder to cover. It made things harder to bring you on television. It takes a massive staff to do those kinds of things. But Cole, you need to go home and find NBC's Gold Zone. Gold Zone is their whip around coverage of basically any competition where there is a medal at stake and an American could win the medal.
You know, I'm good with that because that means that I don't have to sit down and watch something that I don't care about. Right. Okay. Yeah. It's kind of like a Red Zone.
Exactly.
NFL Red Zone. That's a great channel. I will admit I will watch that. I'm not going to sit down and watch. Like, here's the deal. Saturday, I tried to sit down and watch the Olympics. My ADHD wouldn't let me because the sports that we're on, I just don't care about.
We're getting into the better part of the Olympics. If you are not into the fencing and the equestrian stuff, which it's really hard. And I've seen a lot of people ask that question on Twitter. Like, why are more people not into it? Well, because we all like narratives. We all like storylines. And that's tough to do when NBC isn't really doing a whole lot of coverage of the equestrian team, right?
Yeah,
like we know about
team.
Right.
Good
we
God.
know about Simone Biles. We know that story, and they're doing a fantastic job covering the Simone Biles story.
By the way, did you see the picture of her and Shaq side by side?
Yeah.
Oh my
She's like almost
God.
half his height.
That's unreal. I don't even know she's half.
Yeah. Simone, like when you see her by herself on television, you know, because they're all up on a platform, she looks normal height. Now she looks jacked because she's jacked.
Yeah,
but
she is.
When you see her side by side, like her proportions look way off because she's just yoked and very, very short. And then you see her next to Shaq, and it just drives it home like, whoa, this girl is tiny.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
So the only thing that I would say that I'm urgently interested in, Diesel, in the next few days is what USA basketball does. And I know that the 3-on-3 is not really going well. I'm not the biggest fan of 3-on-3. It's just not realistic.
No, we're used to 5-on-5.
Yeah.
We're used to 25-second shot clocks, and the clock is shortened. It feels more like a backyard game.
It does. And I like that. I don't like a backyard game in the Olympics. I want to be able to see 5-on-5. I know that they are 3-0 in Paris, the Team USA men's basketball. So here's the deal. You talk about them beating Puerto Rico, Diesel 104-83. I guess the bad part, the downside of this whole basketball Team USA experiment is, as much as I want to see competitive games, I don't know that that's going to happen. Again, we saw, I think it was South Sudan a couple of weeks ago in an exhibition. They didn't even show up. They almost lost a game. But I want to see good, because I'm a basketball fan, right? I want to see good competitive basketball. And for Team USA, the men's team, who I love watching NBA, everybody knows all the players on the team. Anthony Edwards has been really good as of late. But I want to see some really competitive games. I just don't know that I'm going to get to see that.
You know what I love about the Olympics is it basically serves as a geography lesson for Americans every 4 years.
It does.
You're out of school, you haven't taken geography in a long time, and then they start throwing names of countries at you that you're not really sure exist. Like USA versus South Sudan. I didn't know there was a South Sudan. And honestly, it sounds wrong to call it South Sudan, right? I mean, shouldn't there be like the Sudanese word for South? Shouldn't that be what it is? If it's like Sudan, that makes sense to me. Don't call it South Sudan. It sounds wrong.
As of right now, literally, we're watching the quarterfinals game between this isn't the sand volleyball.
This is volleyball.
Now, I will
team volleyball.
Let me just say this. There are ways. This is terrible of me to say, but if you wanted me to get really interested, especially in the sand beach volleyball, there are ways they could get me more interested, right?
Certain camera angles.
I mean, I'm just saying in general, just in general.
Now you're talking about the men's game or the women's game?
The women's game.
Oh, okay.
The women's game. I don't know that the men play on sand, but the women on the sand.
They do.
Well, that shows you how much I know about men's volleyball. I'm watching right now this volleyball game. Are you telling me that this is the question? As an American, as someone who loves their country, Am I supposed to be able to sit down on a Monday at 4:15 when I get home from work and watch a quarterfinals game between Brazil and USA men's volleyball and be entertained? I can't do it. Can you?
Well, that's entirely. Yeah, I can.
You can?
I love watching volleyball.
Really?
I love these guys are athletes.
See, I can't do it, man.
I mean, you got to think these are all of these dudes. This is a collection of guys that are over 6'6", 6'7". So these are NBA caliber players. As a matter of fact, the Team USA, the 2-man USA beach volleyball team was eliminated yesterday, I think, or today. And one of the players on Team USA is a former NBA player.
Really?
So he's an athlete. Yeah. You don't have to be 18, 19, 20 years old to be elite at volleyball. Mm-hmm. So he's an athlete. He knows how to work as a team. He's really tall. He can move. I mean, those are all things that you can't teach somebody. So it's like when you hear NASCAR loves to recruit college athletes coming out of school because they're big, they're muscular, they know how to work as a team, they know how to take instruction.
Yeah.
All of these things are traits that are useful in NASCAR pit crews, and all the traits of an NBA player are useful for a volleyball player.
On the stream, JD says, on the YouTube stream, by the way, JD says, I honestly wish there was a male volleyball team at my school when I was growing up. I'll say this. I'm not interested in male volleyball. However, I might have been, to JD's point, if they had. I didn't have.
This is what you don't realize. Indoor volleyball is wildly popular in Europe.
Okay,
it's hugely popular. As a matter of fact, there used to be an intern that worked here. This was years ago.
Really?
Years ago, an intern that worked here at the Fan Upstate, who went overseas and was playing professional volleyball in like Slovenia, Slovakia, something like that.
Yeah.
He was getting paid to do it.
I like Savlaki.
Yeah, he was getting paid to do it.
I think if it was a sport that I was exposed to growing up, my outlook might be different, right? But we didn't have. I don't think high school started having men's volleyball till very recent, and I don't even know right now in 2024 that all high schools do have men's.
Yeah, I don't know that you got enough tall kids who want to go play volleyball
because club team,
they want to join. They want to join the basketball team. They want to play football or whatever. It's hard to get enough players together to I think field a team at a lot of. That doesn't mean that some schools couldn't do it. Charter the sport, get it going.
Yeah.
And then move on. I do think there's one thing that the Olympics are missing though, Cole. I think we need a new medal that's better than gold.
Oh,
I do think we need one medal that's better than gold.
What would you call it though?
You could only get it for one reason. Only if you set a world record a final. So like Usain Bolt goes out there and sets a world record in the final for the 200 meter. He gets like a platinum medal or an adamantium medal, something like badass and
something
awesome.
That
diamond
has
crusted.
to be better than gold.
Yeah,
it's got to be diamond.
Like it's gold, but it's better than gold, right? I think that's what should happen.
I like it. It sounds very, very expensive. Is what it sounds, but my God, with $1.25 billion in ad revenue, I think they might can afford it. Diesel, it's that time. We've been teasing this for several months now. I was out of the country last week. You go out of the state, I believe, next week. So we had to do our predictions this week. We're going to do Clemson on Wednesday. But coming up next, our official 2024 South Carolina Gamecock predictions. We're putting the pencils away and we're getting out the ink pens. You tell us where you agree and disagree next. Well, when you talk about indecisive, I guess you can mention my name, Diesel, because when looking at South Carolina's 2024 schedule and you and I having to make predictions, I literally, during the commercial break, just made a change to my predictions. You know, they always say, go with your gut and don't change it later. Well, I just did the opposite. I changed it later, and South Carolina fans, you're welcome because it went in your favor. But there are two games that I have struggled with all day today as Diesel and I are giving our official in pen and ink, the old feather pens where you have to, lick the tip of the pen to get the ink to work. That's what we're gonna do.
You don't have to do that, right? You dip it in the ink.
Well, I think that you licking it makes it. I think that's what.
No, it just means now you're ingesting ink. It's probably lead ink as well. So congratulations, you just lead contaminated.
Well, it's no fun if you don't lick it, right? Like, come on, you gotta lick the end of the pen.
Please put that on a promo. Please put that on.
Okay.
It's no fun if you don't lick it.
Okay, and you've already made a promo today too. I forgot what you said already, but we're on promo.
Promo watch.
Promo watch. I like it. All right, here we go.
Here's what we need, Cole. We need from our Tolos. If we say something they think is promo worthy,
yeah,
we need you Tolos. You active listening. We need you to text in or to message in on the stream the word promo. Anytime you think we've said something good enough, that should be a promo.
On the text line, fan promo, FAN.
Correct.
Start your text 71307. Hey, speaking of text, get those phones out, Tolos, and the Tolo, that stands for turn it on, leave it on. That's what you are, the listeners. Get the phones out, as long as you're not driving. Get ready. Phone lines, when we're done, are going to be open as well. 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663, as we're going to make our predictions for the South Carolina Gamecocks in 2024. Get ready, Diesel. You ready? Yeah. You warmed up? We do need that. That'd be good. That'd be good. Look at you. We're going to start with the easy answer here. And believe it or not, just a teaser, Diesel and I, just so you know, just so you can stay tuned in, Diesel and I do not have the same record for the Gamecocks. I put it out on social media that we were going to do this, and you know what? We cannot change them after this. So I think for the most of the schedule, you and I are going to agree, but let's get right into it. Old Dominion at South Carolina, the same day as Clemson, Georgia. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about this one for you or I, is there?
No, okay, they're going to win that game. And South Carolina Gamecock fans are going to feel like they went 1-1 on that day because they're going to beat Old Dominion and Clemson is going to lose.
Oh, wow.
They're going to feel like they started the season 1-1. South Carolina fans care about Clemson football almost more than you care about South Carolina football.
Well,
it's true.
They want to see Clemson lose. There's no doubt about that. So you and I both go 1-0.
1-0.
All right, here's where it gets tough. Because I literally, during the break, just changed this. And I'm going to regret it. I know it. I'm going to regret it. But the second week, Diesel, South Carolina at Kentucky. I am going to go, believe it or not, I'm going to go with a win for the South Carolina Gamecocks in week 2 on the road at Kentucky.
Oh, I got them losing. Losing at Kentucky. There's no way.
You don't think?
No, I don't. I mean, Kentucky has had South Carolina's number over the past couple of seasons.
So
Kentucky has a more established head coach. They've got a more established roster. I think South Carolina is going to take an ugly L in week 2.
No.
Ugly
Not
L.
just an L, but an ugly L.
An ugly L.
Here's the kicker. I'm going to be transparent. If we did this segment 10 minutes ago, I would agree with you, Diesel, and I would also have South Carolina losing at Kentucky in week 2. However, during the break, I changed it. I may regret doing that. I may not. I may look very smart in 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, whenever it is, but we'll see. Bottom line is, I changed it. I think South Carolina this season gets momentum from the Old Dominion win. Lenora Sellers shows out. The Gamecocks, in my opinion, start 2-0, and the fan base for South Carolina Diesel gets to feel really good about themselves. Again, not for long, right? But for once in a while, for a change, they get to feel good about themselves. I have them starting 2-0.
I think this is well, first of all, it's Lenora Sellers' first SEC game as a starter on the road, hostile-ish environment. Not certainly the most hostile crowd in the SEC, but they're going to be jacked up for their first SEC home game of the season. I think it's going to be a huge jump in competition from Old Dominion to Kentucky. I can't do it, man. I can't predict that Lenora Sellers has himself a big game. He will get better from this game, no doubt. But I don't find him finding success here in the first SEC game as a starter.
So if you just tuned in, Diesel and I are giving our official South Carolina Gamecock predictions for the 2024 season. If you're on the stream, we're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can get your comments in there, as so many have already done so during this segment. You can also text the show, 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Through 2 games, Diesel has South Carolina 1-1, a win against Old Dominion at home, a loss on the road at Kentucky. I have the Gamecocks 2-0, win against Old Dominion at home, a win on the road at Kentucky. Diesel, the Kentucky game, and there's one more, I'll get to it later, but the Kentucky game for me, when picking the games and picking what I think South Carolina will finish in 2024, I do believe that the Kentucky game is the hardest game on the schedule to pick. I really do. And you said it, you thought it, you think it might get ugly. It may get ugly, and I might end up looking foolish. I just think that the Kentucky game's a tough one to pick because there's been really no consistency as of late in terms of who owns who. I know Shane Beamer, I think his very first year, he went on the road and beat Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken, but I do like South Carolina to get a win.
JB, formerly Spur Daddy, says, South Carolina has beaten Kentucky the past 2 seasons. Yeah, I know that. This is a matchup really that's been kind of streaky over the past couple of years. Obviously, South Carolina dominated this rivalry from 2000 through to 2013, winning all but one of those matchups. But then Kentucky went on a big streak, and Shane Beamer is 2-1 against Kentucky. I give him credit for that. It was a 3-point win last year, so it's not like it was
close.
It's not like it was some elite performance against Kentucky. You beat them by 10 in 2022. I just think with Lenora Sellers, I'm not willing to anoint him this early.
I think it's an interesting game. I would actually compare this game to last year's game against North Carolina, where I felt like the game set the trajectory / tone for the rest of the season. I just think that if they drop this one, it's going to be a sour season. And again, maybe it's me.
Well, yeah, it's a tone setter. And then
it's a tone setter
for sure. It gets really tough after this.
And speaking of after this, that leads us to week 3. LSU comes to town. This one's in Columbia. Is there any chance, Diesel, that you and I think that South Carolina can pull the upset at home against LSU?
Big L. Big L on the stream. I got to do this way. This big L for South Carolina in week 3 against LSU.
Guess what?
God.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue with you, right? I'll do that at 5 o'clock. I'm not going to argue with you on this one. I don't think South Carolina beats Kentucky. It being at South Carolina, though, is interesting. You don't have to go to Baton Rouge, so maybe that makes it a little bit more close.
Well, the Gamecock fans will still be uber jacked up for this game.
That'll be a great environment if they're 2-0.
In all likelihood, I see them at 1-1 at that point. As long as Kentucky doesn't beat your asses down and you look competitive against Kentucky or had a close game against Kentucky, the South Carolina fan base is going to be as hype as it gets.
And then if I'm right, if they're 2-0, that's going to be an incredible environment at Williams-Brice week 3 as LSU comes to town. So we both have a loss there. I do think that somehow, some way, before we move on from LSU, if I told you, Diesel, that South Carolina will win one game this year that they're not supposed to win, then could I convince you that it's LSU? Or would you go somewhere else?
No, I've got them going somewhere else. Okay, LSU's stacked.
Okay. No, I don't disagree with you. I just wanted to test the waters.
Both of these teams have new quarterbacks, taking snaps this year, but I think LSU is going to be more equipped to protect their quarterback, and South Carolina is not.
Okay, so through 3, I have them at 2-1. Diesel has them at 1-2. Next, Akron at South Carolina. No, nothing to talk about there. Really, nothing
Win
to
for the
analyze.
Gamecocks.
Right?
Win.
So I would now have South Carolina at 3-1. You would have them at 2-2.
2-2, yeah.
Okay. Ole Miss at South Carolina. That's a big L for me, and for you,
that's a big L.
Big L. No faith there.
Not Big Al from Alabama. Big L.
Big L, his cousin. I think Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, I think they roll. I hope I'm wrong here for South Carolina's sake, but I could see that one getting ugly. I could see that one getting ugly at Williams-Brice, and that could be one of those, halftime, where's the student section kind of games. I hope I'm wrong, because it'd be really interesting for us to talk about if South Carolina somehow kept it close against Ole Miss. But to that point, I have South Carolina 3-2. Diesel, that would put them at the opposite, 2-3 on your schedule, right?
Yeah, this is the really tough stretch for South Carolina's schedule. This 3-game segue, starting with that, is when it gets really hard for the Gamecocks.
South Carolina travels to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and that one is a
loss.
No ifs, ands, or buts. Nothing to sit here and really analyze and say, what if? No, that's a loss.
If South Carolina wins this game, that's when things start getting ugly for Kalen DeBoer.
Can you imagine?
The Alabama fans would lose their ever-loving minds if they lost to South Carolina.
Poor guy. Oh, what a terrible way to start.
We made the wrong hire.
He lost to Shane Beamer. God, I can hear it now.
He wasn't even on staff at Alabama.
Yeah. All right, next, South Carolina on the road again. You mentioned it, a really tough part of their schedule. At Oklahoma, I'm going a loss. Diesel, you're going
loss as well.
So we agree there.
Very tough. Oklahoma always has great skill positions, and South Carolina's defense I think this is just going to be a little slow against Oklahoma's skill guys.
So you and I both have them on a 3-game skid to this point, right?
Yeah.
Then they come home, and I'll tell you this. This was the second game where I was a little bit iffy. However, because they've lost 3 in a row, in my opinion, your opinion, I think they do get back on track at home against A&M. I give them a win there.
Win for me as well. This is where things start to turn up a little bit for South Carolina's schedule in my mind. But A&M is just kind of on that cusp. They've got a new head coach as well, so maybe you catch them. If you're going to get A&M, you got to get them this time, because I do like what Elko is doing down there. I think he's gonna turn that program around in a big way.
I like that. Listen, Elko, is he going to be the next Jimbo Fisher? I don't know. I don't know if it will end badly like Jimbo did, but I'll tell you this. I do like Mike Elko. I think, to your point, South Carolina better win this year because they're going to get better. I have them at 4-4 through the A&M game.
At this point, I have them at 3-5.
Okay. So a little bit of a difference there between you and I. You go to Vandy. You go to Nashville the very next week. Any despair, any disagreement on this one? I think we're both in agreement here.
Well, I'll tell you, you better win this game.
Yeah, no,
you better win this game. I mean, if you're South Carolina, you've watched your eastern half of the conference peers pass you by. You've seen Missouri come in and pass you by. You've seen Kentucky pass you by. And if you're now losing to Vandy, this may be the week that Shane Beamer gets fired if they lose that game. I don't see it happening.
No,
I don't see it happening. But you're going to win at Vandy. I mean, are they going to have any bleachers at all? Is anybody going to be able to go and watch that game?
I think 15.
The good
15,000.
Yeah, the good news is if you lose to Vandy and nobody's there to watch it, did it even happen?
That's true. Good point. All right, the next week you and I both have a win at Vandy. The next week, Missouri comes to South Carolina. I'll go L there. I think this is a very important game, however, for South Carolina, because you don't want to get blown out here. I think you have to keep it competitive at home. I just don't think they win now.
If Missouri stays healthy at this point, I mean, we know how
their schedule's so
how
weak.
Old this team is in a good way, a very experienced football team. at Missouri. South Carolina, at this point of the season, should find themselves. However, if South Carolina starts having injuries on the offensive line and they start having to shuffle things around, Missouri's going to eat you for lunch.
Wofford at South Carolina. I pull for Wofford, but
it's a big
not gonna lie here. Wofford's not going to stand a chance. Wofford will lose that one. And then
this is not Wofford of old, man. If this was Wofford
Mike Ayers,
15 years ago, I may say South Carolina, you may have a bit of a tough time.
Wofford's in a tough spot, man.
Especially when they were running that wishbone.
Yep. Last one. South Carolina goes to Death Valley. I do think this one will be closer than people think. However, I go L for South Carolina. That puts me at a 6-6 finish for the South Carolina Gamecocks, bowl eligible in 2024. Diesel, are you going to surprise anybody here?
No. Clemson's going to win that game. And this may be the end of the season, Cole, when Dabo Swinney needs some vanity points, right? He needs to look good beating South Carolina. I think Clemson's gonna put a whooping on the Gamecocks in the last game of the season. 5-7, missing a bowl game again.
5-7. So it is fascinating because I think that Diesel, if he goes 6-6, which is what I predict, I think he's okay, right? You win 3 conference games, you're okay for now. If you go 5-7, does the story then change? Is there any? I don't think they fire him at 5-7.
But I think 4-8.
Oh, he's gone.
Fired.
Yeah, 4-8. He's gone.
5-7. It's a 60-40 split as far as 60% he stays, 40% he's gone. It depends on the market, who's available at the time, who else is really searching for a head coach at the time. I mean, if something crazy happened, if I don't even know who this person is, maybe Sharon Moore is going to be available. You could hire him. Yeah,
I just got that's gross.
That's creepy. Gross. Text messages.
That's gross. What if they win 6 though? With your prediction,
6 he's safe.
Bowl win. Oh, just kidding.
6
can't win. We can't win 6 with 5 wins. So you're saying 6? If I'm right, 6 he's safe. But a few years ago was a COVID year. A couple of 5 win teams played in bowls, but I don't think that'll happen this year. But 5, it's borderline. I think if 5 happens, South Carolina Gamecock fans are ready to move on, but they don't. 4, I think he's gone. 6, I think he's safe.
Yeah, it's going to get ugly with the conversation among Gamecock fans. Some will still love Shane Beamer, and I've said 100 times, I love Shane Beamer's vibe. I love the cut of his jib.
I do too.
But ultimately, you're here to win football games, right? You're not here to come up with catchy slogans that it makes everybody feel good.
Yeah.
You're here to win football games. When we come back, Cole, it's time for us to take a whip around the sports world, see what's happening in our segment we call Daily Wires. It's Wire to Wire. A lot of stuff happening in the sports world, not just the build up to college and pro football and high school football as well.
It's here, man.
There's a lot
Can you
happening
believe
out
that?
there. It's
God,
it's finally here. Like, so we have one of those refrigerators that's got a changeable filter.
Yeah.
It's like you got to take basically everything off your top shelf,
Y'all
and you can get to the
fancy.
filter back there. But I remember like the day it said this thing is 1 day past due. And then all of a sudden it says, bam, it's 9 days past due. I'm like, how did that happen?
I know.
Like I blinked and it went from I swear, I was like,
I love
Ashley,
it,
I
man.
swear that this thing jumps days.
I love it.
Like,
I love it.
I swear it jumps. And that's what's happening right now with
I'm
college
so
football.
excited.
Like you blink and 3 more days have gone past and you're like 3 days closer to football being back.
It happens this month. This
Right.
month.
Right.
Let's
We're
go.
what, 20 days away now?
I don't know, but it's close.
Are we
It's
short of
close.
3 weeks?
It's close.
Either way.
You
This
get
is,
me excited.
this is what we call our daily wires. This is our whip around the sports world. The Atlanta Braves lost yesterday to the Miami Marlins 7-0 and are 6 games back in the NL East just as this team was starting to get hot. Just as the Phillies had gone ice cold.
Yeah, they have.
You start losing games to the Brewers and the friggin' Marlins.
In the division game. You need the division
Yeah.
game, but no, you lose.
Sucks. How do we let this happen?
Unbelievable.
How do they let that happen? Do the Atlanta Braves play today? No, they do not.
I hope
They
not.
are
I hope
off.
not.
Yeah, they need something to get out of that funk. The U.S. now leads the overall medal count. We have 78 total medals. We are 1 shy of China when it comes to gold medals. They have 21. We have 20. Australia, France, Great Britain, they're back there in the teens. Australia has 13. So I don't think there's a risk. I put this into a 5 o'clock fight with Rob last week. Cole, do you believe that Team USA will win the gold medal count by over or under 2.5 golds?
Ooh.
Not the overall. We got the overall, but the gold medal count. I took the under.
Oh, really?
Are you willing to go with Rob and say USA dominates this thing?
No.
No? I do think we win it.
I don't want to say 2.5. That's a good number though, because it makes you think a little bit. No, I would probably say under. I'd say 2. Watch me be wrong and it'd be 7, but I don't think it'll be that much.
Here to another sport that apparently Americans don't care about. 77,000 people packed Williams-Brice Stadium for football. Manchester United and Liverpool came to Colombia and absolutely packed the house. You telling me Americans don't care about soccer? This is the best soccer in the world brought to our doorstep, and they packed the place out.
So I saw several pictures.
The photos looked amazing.
Oh, they did. A friends of mine that I follow and friends with on social media. I'm not a soccer guy, but I'll say this. For that stadium to be packed out for soccer, it was fantastic.
Would you go to that?
Yeah. If somebody gave me, I don't know that I'd pay.
Oh, come on. This is the best soccer in the world in front of our eyes.
How much?
I'd be willing to pay like $40 for this.
I was going to say 60.
60, you pay 60
60 bucks I'd pay, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't even know if you could get in for that price.
I don't think you probably – I'd probably say no.
Has anybody seen what tickets cost for that game? Let us know. Cheap, expensive, whatever. What have you heard?
But I'll say this. The reason I was so impressed by the crowd was I haven't seen a crowd like that in a long time.
What does that say when a foreign soccer match puts more fans in your stadium than you do?
Yeah, not good.
Not good.
Not good.
Speaking of not good, Xavier Leggett, or I think it's Leggett now, has exited Carolina Panthers practice with a lower leg injury. It's early. Hopefully this thing isn't too bad. We didn't really expect Xavier to play much in the preseason games anyway.
Sure.
So, he's going to have some time to rehab it. I think he's going to be fine.
Hopefully is all I'll say.
This one is a fascinating story, Cole. Tom Kim cried in the clubhouse after missing out on an Olympic medal, and now he faces military service.
I don't know in my life, in the time that I've covered sports,
Pressure packed.
I don't know that I've ever heard a story as crazy. Think about it. For all the crazy sports stories I'm not talking about allegations and scandals. I'm talking about strictly sports. I cannot recall a story as bizarre as somebody missing a medal, not getting a medal, and now having to go serve his country. That's nuts.
So what is this service length of compulsory military service in South Korea? All South Koreans have to do it. And had he won a medal, he would have gotten out of that for life. And that would have been essentially equivalent to military service.
This is, I just, when I saw him crying in the clubhouse.
First of all, what a bogus country that lets you out of your compulsory military service. If you have compulsory military service, everyone should have to do it. There's no getting out just because you're a good golfer and you went and won a medal. I mean, it's ludicrous, right?
I don't think that I think I would probably agree with you that regardless of how good you are at a sport, you should still have to serve.
Good news is if you're South Korea, you know you're not going to war.
Oh,
you're not going to war.
Well, not right now.
Well, I mean, you are on the border of one of the nuttiest regimes in the world, so I guess it's possible.
I just cannot recall a time I've heard a sports story as bizarre as
Jimi Hendrix served his country. Elvis served his country. Tom Kim, you can do it too. Vikings wide receiver Jordan Addison was charged with DUI. He has his hearing October 7th. Remember, he was found asleep at the wheel of his Rolls Royce, blocking a lane of I-105 westbound near LAX. Yeesh. And USA Today's coaches poll came out. Georgia's number one.
No surprise there.
Right?
I mean, is anybody shocked? All right, coming up next, Diesel, it's 5 o'clock. You've been fighting with Tolos, Rob, but guess what? All of those Tolos, Rob, they got their licks in. It's time for me to get my licks back in next. 5 o'clock fight. Stay tuned. Well, Diesel, a lot of people say kickers aren't football players, and I'm one of those people.
A lot of people say gingers don't have souls.
Well, I've heard that too. But regardless of how you feel about kickers, the Chiefs and star kicker Harrison Butker have made an agreement on a contract extension to make him the highest paid kicker in the NFL and in the history of the NFL. You talking about getting paid Harrison Butker $25.6 million
Take
extension.
That cancel culture that tried to come after Harrison Butker. What do you think he's going to say to a religious school commencement?
Wow.
What do you think he's going to say?
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And he deserves it. He's best kicker in the league.
He's quite good.
He's
quite accurate and consistent.
So now you can allow your kids to train to be kickers. You can't say there's no money in kicking anymore. That would be false. So congratulations to Harrison.
Maybe DJ Uiagalelei should be a kicker.
Oh,
he doesn't like
that's
getting
rough.
hit. He doesn't like getting hit, right?
I hope Big Dave's not listening. The phone here's his phone's ringing. Let me
Big Dave's the one who told us he's afraid of getting hit.
Is he? Is that true? Oh God, Big Dave. All right, Diesel. He's been here holding it down. I've been away the last few weeks. JD says Diesel's been beating up on inferior competition. Is that true?
Your words, not mine.
That's JD's words. It's time to get right into it. Here is the 5 o'clock fight.
It's an all-out slugfest, and nobody's leaving unscathed. 3 topics, 1 winner. It's the 5 o'clock fight on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson on the Fan Upstate.
So if this is the first time you've tuned in, we appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening to Wire to Wire. He's Diesel. I'm Cole Bryson. You can also listen after the fact, and if you're doing that, we appreciate you listening whenever you have time to check us out on the 3 Odyssey app is where you can find us after the fact. Podcasting apps as well, Spotify, Apple Music, you name it, Apple Podcast rather. 5 o'clock fight each and every day at 5 o'clock. We, Diesel and I, have to disagree. There are 3 rounds. And you, the Tolos, you, the audience, you, the listener, you get to decide who wins and who loses. Get those phones right back out of your pockets. 71307 is the way you can text into the show. If you're in the stream, you can also vote. Hop in. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Let's get it going with round numero uno.
Round 1, fight.
All right, Diesel, this one's a very tough one for me to answer, so I'm intrigued to what your answer will be. We talked about Alabama in the very first segment. I was busting narratives, and I busted the narrative of Alabama taking a back seat. I think they're going to stick around for quite some time. Round 1, Nick Saban took over Alabama in January of 2007. In his 3rd season, he won the national championship. Will Kalen DeBoer win a national championship within his first 3 years at Alabama?
Oof. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no because I think Alabama's schedule is, it's just going to stack up and be brutal. Alabama will be in the playoff most years. And so they're going to have a chance. But, everything has to go right for you. And Kirby Smart has such a chokehold on that conference right now. And the fact that we've got so many more contenders, the parity with Oregon and spending the money that they're spending, Ohio State, Michigan, the University of Dirty Text Messages. There's so much good football out there that I think it gets honestly harder. It's easier to get into the playoff. It's harder to win it because you're going to have to go through the gauntlet of more wins to get there. So I'm going to say no.
Okay.
And I'm going to say if Kalen DeBoer doesn't win one by year 6, he's fired.
Oh, boy.
Think about that. That's Alabama.
Bad.
They expect titles.
No, it's Title Town. You're absolutely right.
The T in Tuscaloosa stands for titles.
Well, it does. I think he does. I think Kalen DeBoer does win a national championship within his first 3 years. I think Kalen DeBoer, as I said in the very first segment, I think he is walking into a situation that's very, very good. And I think the table's set quite nicely for Kalen DeBoer. And, if anybody can go follow in the footsteps of Nick Saban, Kalen DeBoer, who's 112-9 or something. The stat is in the very first segment. I have to go. Let me pull it up so I don't misspeak here. 104-12 as a head coach. For a guy who's 104-12, I think walking into the situation that he's walking into, I think he will be A-okay. And I do think Kalen DeBoer wins a national championship within the first 3 years at Alabama. The talent's still there. It's not going anywhere. They're going to reload year after year. And again, not discrediting Nick Saban, not taking away anything that he did. I just do think that DeBoer is in a good enough situation and he's a good enough coach. They ain't going nowhere, as the locals say, in my opinion. All right. Round one, let us know who wins, 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Now for round
2, fight.
You and I talked about this a few minutes ago, and you made reference to those dirty text messages from Sherrod Moore, the
Bunch
Michigan
of words
coach.
I can't read on the
That's
radio.
right. Diesel round 2. That segment that we did with Michigan and the penalties and sign stealing and the text messages, there's a lot there, right? It's not just hearsay.
Mm-hmm.
So the question for round 2 is, will Michigan, and that includes the coach, that includes the university, assistant coaches, will Michigan face repercussions going forward for what has been done in this sign stealing scandal?
Repercussions from whom?
NCAA.
Any NCAA repercussions? I'm going to say no.
Ooh.
I'm going to say no because I think the NCAA wants to put this thing behind them. The NCAA wants to treat it as if it's a final decision. We've already tried this. We're not going to go back to this. You know, I don't know if the NCAA has any specific rules around, you know, double jeopardy the way that we have in the legal system in this country. I think they're going to look at it and say, okay, that's a really ugly situation, but we've already weighed in on this. We're done. I understand that there's a new preponderance of evidence, but we have to wait and see what that evidence actually shows. Do we think there's enough to really nail this program? Does the NCAA want to nail Michigan? I don't think they do. I think they want that. They want their elite programs to stay elite. They don't want to smack their elite programs down that way.
I hear you. I just think the more I hear, the more I read about what's going on with their head coach and the documentary that's coming out now, the sign stealing scandal. To me, Diesel, there's just way too much out there for nothing to be done. I do think the NCAA has to come down on them. I think they have to set a precedence here and say, look,
Death penalty.
wouldn't Ohio State fans be excited about that, right? Or would they? I think they have to set some kind of example with Michigan here. Now, I don't know what those penalties or repercussions will be. Maybe they're small, maybe they're not small. And you know, it is something to do with Sherrod Moore, the head coach. I don't think there'll be big repercussions by any stretch. However, I do think the NCAA will have to do something.
I don't think Michigan will do anything to Sherrod Moore because they had to go through this whole process of vetting him as that.
No, that makes them look even worse, right?
It's not like they just said, "Oh, yeah, Sherrod Moore's on staff here. Everybody loves him. Yeah, let's make him the head coach."
That's right.
Like they go through a process, right? They should vet everyone as vigorously as they could.
You would think
as they can. You got to think that in the interview process of Sherrod Moore, especially with the conversations that they had with Jim Harbaugh on his way out, they decided, we understand this is kind of a sticky situation, but we feel comfortable enough in our ability to weather the storm of whatever horrible PR comes out about this, that we're willing to take this chance on Sherrod Moore.
It's crazy. It's absolutely wild. I just don't see how you can do nothing. That's my whole point. How can you do nothing? So round one, again, to recap, Nick Saban, when he took over, he won a natty in 3 years. Will Kalen DeBoer do the same? Diesel says no. I say yes. Round two, will Michigan face any repercussions from the NCAA? Diesel says no again. I say yes again. That leaves one more round.
Final round. Fight.
Final round, Diesel. What's better? This is a tough one. I don't know how I'm going to decide on this. I just read this one for the first time, and I don't know where I'm going to go. A perfect buttermilk biscuit. You're making me hungry, by the way. Or perfect cornbread. This one's tough. This one's tough.
Yeah. Like a perfect buttermilk biscuit. It's warm. It's soft. It's got a little butter on top. Maybe it's a little golden brown on top. I mean, it's just perfection, right? A perfect buttermilk biscuit. You can make a sandwich out of it. You can put anything you want to on it. Top it with gravy. It holds up. I'm going perfect buttermilk biscuit.
No.
It's hard to describe. When that salty, savory hits your tongue, that perfect buttermilk biscuit is the best.
So again, we're splitting hairs as we do often. However, there's no way if there's cornbread on the ticket here. You've got to go with the cornbread. I love biscuits. You can tell by looking at me, I eat too many biscuits, right? However, man, you talk about that cornbread, that Xavier Leggett cornbread. You know what I mean? That Xavier Leggett cornbread with the black-eyed peas and yes, give me the cornbread all day long. People even dip it in milk. I don't know if you ever heard of that or not, but cornbread. Good cornbread's hard to beat, man. And, being from the South, I got to go cornbread on this one.
A good woman's hard to find, and perfect cornbread's hard to find as well. And, hey, this is entirely subjective. It's whatever perfect cornbread is to you.
That's right.
Everybody likes it differently. Some people like it a little saltier. Some people like it a little sweeter. Whatever perfect cornbread, whatever a perfect buttermilk biscuit is to you.
Well, that's why I put a note for you and I only. There's that one inspired another round.
Love it.
Tomorrow, and it relates to that. So I'm not liking the votes I'm seeing already.
Oh, I love these votes.
I don't like them. Let's tell you this. I'll tell you this. We're gonna get to your votes. 71307 on the text line. I really need your help, texters. I can't lose on my first day back, but if you want to suggest a fight, you can do so. Here's how.
What do you want Diesel and Co Bryson to fight about next?
If you've got an ass, I'll kick it.
Submit your topics to Diesel at thefanupstate.com. Subject line fight on the Fan Upstate.
I don't want to read these. I don't want to do it. Wesley Roberts is just killing me already. What did I do to Wesley Roberts on the stream? I mean, what I say to piss him off today? Come on. So, Wesley.
Say it.
I have to say it. I have to say
it.
Diesel 3, Cole 0.
Yes.
All right, next segment. What about Witt? What did Witt say?
Witt says round 1, Diesel. Round 2, Cole. Round 3, Diesel. The biscuit wins it all.
The biscuit.
You got to risk it for the biscuit.
Come
you know
on.
what I'm saying?
Come on. What did I do to piss y'all? Witt. So I at least won round 2 on Michigan. I guess Witt and Wesley, I mean,
I don't think the NCAA has the stones to go after.
Well, they
Michigan
may not.
to open this thing back up.
You know what I'm surprised about on these first 2 votes, though, and I know we got a lot of votes to get to, but I'm shocked. Again, it's just 2, but are people just putting Nick Saban, or excuse me, putting Kalen DeBoer in Alabama on the back burner now? I mean, are they out of playoff or national championship contention now? That's what I don't know. I think we might be making a mistake there. I really do. I don't think we can count them out quite yet. Let's see. Where are we going? On the text line?
Yeah, let's go to the text line.
Let's do it.
Texter says Cole wins round 1. All DeBoer has done is win with less. So now he will win with more. Diesel rounds win 2 because the culprit is gone. Yeah, I think they're going to try to pin as much of this as they can on Jim Harbaugh and say it was all him. He did it all. Even though we have these deleted text messages of Sharon Moore texting another man with extremely explicit language.
It's weird.
I mean, like weird sexual language. I can't wrap my mind around what Sharon Moore is thinking here. I know there's like locker room talk.
Yeah.
But that is so far beyond locker room talk.
Well,
it's just disgusting.
50-something years old, right?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, at that point, you got to friggin' grow up.
Yeah.
Let's see. And Cole wins round 3 because my cornbread could be eaten plain or in a good bowl of beef stew. We could split hairs and call you both winners in my book.
Thank you, texter from the 344.
So it's a tie.
No.
I'm going to take your win away because the texter here said it's even.
We don't do ties. This is not soccer. This is a real sport. There's defense in this sport. Mm-hmm. Come on, texter.
Let's see. Alan S says Diesel with the clean sweep. Did you want me to keep going with these text messages because you're not doing so hot?
Stop it.
Let's see. Brad says Diesel wins round 1 and Cole wins rounds 2 and 3. Cornbread all day.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad.
Come on, Brad.
Much love, baby. Much love.
Let's see here. I only caught round 3. Diesel had me at biscuit. Thank you, Corn Chip. He says, let's see. G says Diesel wins 3. Cole, Will 1 and 2. Wins 1 and 2.
Thank you, G.
Okay.
So I finally got another.
CJ from Greer. Cornbread and milk rules. Cole for the sweep.
Text line's got my back, man.
Trey from Kentucky. God almighty. I'm getting plastered over here. Cole 2 and 3. Diesel wins round 1. Let's see. Logan Simpson, Cole 1, Diesel 2. Biscuits do indeed win it all.
Logan, what happened, man? What I do to you?
Texter says 29-28. Diesel a split decision win. And then the last texter here says Cole wins all 3.
Listen, I can always count on my texter, my Tolo texter. Well, for whatever reason, Diesel's got some kind of inside money given to our Tolos on the stream because they always vote Diesel. I feel like maybe I'm wrong on that, but I'm going to say it and claim it today. I can always count on my Tolos on the text line to come in clutch.
When we come back, Cole, it's time to dive into SEC football with a guest, Landon Holyfield. First time on the show, first time on Wire to Wire. He's a content creator for Inside Texas and host of Sports Below the Surface. We'll talk Texas Longhorns football with Landon Holyfield next. Cole, have you ever heard the saying, find someone whose crazy matches your crazy?
Yeah, I have.
You find somebody like that, you're going to end up in a good relationship. And that's my first question for our guest, Landon Hollyfield, content creator for Inside Texas and host of Sports Below the Surface. Landon, are Texas fans prepared to match SEC crazy with their own version of crazy? Can they bring that kind of heat?
Well, I think first of all, let's do a mic check real quick. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
I think we're good, man.
Loud and clear.
Appreciate it.
Good deal. Well, first of all, gentlemen, thanks for having me. Appreciate y'all. This actually, I guess it's about a year to the day that you brought me on last time, and I came on your radio waves saying crazy things at the time. For a lot of your listeners or viewers, I'm sure were probably either scoffing at me or laughing at me, or maybe a combination of both when I said that, Texas was the 2023 version of the Texas Longhorns was the best and most talented team that they had on campus on the 40 acres since at least the last time that they participated in the national championship, which was 2009. But possibly even going back and even further to that, to the Vince Young 2005 national championship team. And so that played itself out and that aged pretty well, I would say. But to answer the question a little bit more directly, I would say that, I'm sure you guys have maybe seen some of the recruiting, the new NIL world that we live in, the wild, wild west, as I like to refer to it as, when there's Lamborghinis being parked outside and courting all these different recruits and things like that from Lamborghini Austin, then I would say, yeah, not only is our Texas fans ready for this new challenge and this new just endeavor, right? And the most talented, in my opinion, obviously the conference and the entire college football landscape. So yes, it's been a long time coming, man, but this has been 3 years since we kind of knew that it was going to eventually unfold the way that it did. And so there's a lot of built up tension, but the way that things ended last year, right, with a really good taste in a lot of Texas fans' mouths after I call it the dark decade, right? 10 years plus really of just Texas not being Texas. Okay. But that sleeping giant finally woke up and it was cool to see. And now we're taking all that energy from a year ago, winning the Big 12, going out with a bang, and then, being a couple plays away really in the corner of the end zone there with AD Mitchell and Quinn Ewers from locking horns, no pun intended, with Michigan in the national title game. So to answer your question, though, yes, the answer is absolutely yes.
Landon Hollifield joining us on Wire to Wire, content creator for Inside Texas and host of Sports Below the Surface. Landon, what is the experiment with Arch Manning going to look like a year from now? And the reason I say experiment is because he's behind Quinn Ewers, who we all know is a very talented quarterback. Where is this thing going to head? And is Arch Manning just going to wait it out?
Yeah, so that's the thing that I've been trying to get people to understand, because this has been it's a great question, and it's a question that I've received many times since the news of him committing and signing to Texas broke, right? So his familial ties and the experiences that they have all had, not just with his dad, but his grandfather, and both of his two uncles, each of which are in the Hall of Fame, right? It's a very calculated and methodical approach. Okay. And so at the time of his commitment, prior to the 2023 season playing itself out the way that it did, I was publicly supporting of Coach Steve Sarkisian, and it was more so cautious optimism, right? Because I was just ready to kind of see it all come to a head and really just, for lack of a better term, watch Texas be good again. Okay. But to have, once Arch Manning committed, who's, arguably, let's call a spade here, the most sought after recruit that I could ever recall, just because of the last name. Okay. The talent, like you can just say what you want about what you thought about his performance and his prowess in high school, coming from a small private school, right? The level of competition, like in some cases, he was bigger than the offensive linemen that were blocking for him. So there was some people that were sort of mocking that whole situation. Okay. But just remove all of the high school performance and accolades that he had accrued over his time there. To get his commitment was the only stamp of approval that I needed for Steve Sarkisian, period. Like to have Eli Manning, Archie Manning, Peyton Manning, and his father, Cooper, all give Coach Sark their stamp of approval to, the prodigal son, really. Like, let's I'm being hyperbolic a little bit there, but that's kind of how he was courted. Okay. And it wasn't just Texas that felt that way about his potential. So, that was all that I needed to see. It's they bought in to the head coach as well as the program. There's some other familial ties kind of behind the scenes to the university as well. And so the love for Texas was always there, but Steve Sarkisian was the cherry on top. And so the track record of putting quarterbacks into the NFL dates back all the way to his time at USC. And seeing things play out the way that they did a year ago, I think it's like if they were bought in towards being patient and trusting in the process and believing in the coach as well as the rest of his coaching staff prior to last year, it's even that much, that bar has been raised even that much more now. And so, but I will say this. So while patience is technically something that we can tie to Arch Manning's name as of right now, this is Quinn Ewers' team, make no mistake about that. And Quinn has taken that next step. And let's just say that based on the things that I'm hearing from the inside Texas sources who are in and around that program every single day, and then the words directly from Coach Steve Sarkisian himself, the physical and the mental have both taken that third year leap that you would like to expect from any quarterback all across the country. But it's happening. It has happened. Things are looking and trending in the right direction. Like, this has all the makings of a legitimate Heisman contender and a first-round draft pick. I know people think that's crazy because of some of the things that they've seen. Like, Quinn hasn't necessarily lived up to the perfect 1.000 overall high school recruiting ranking that we saw coming out of South Lake when he declared, or I'm sorry, when he graduated a year early and headed off to Ohio State. So those expectations haven't been met yet. But from the things that I'm hearing, let's just say those expectations are more than well on their way right now. But so to put a bow on this discussion here with Arch, I'm also hearing, and there's some kind of rumblings behind the scenes that when you have two quarterbacks, so this is year 3 for Quinn and Coach Sark's system, which is an NFL, it's a calculus level, an AP calculus level system. And that's part of the reason why the guys that are wired the right way, the intangibles in between the ears that get into that stick to his system and buy into the process, they get to the NFL. They play on Sundays because this offense prepares you for that. It's very, very, very in depth. But when you have the two guys like Arch and like Quinn who are wired the way that they are and are doing all the film study, taking care of their bodies, sleeping, all that stuff, right? Like just the intangible things lining up with their physical skill set, that's obvious to everybody with a set of eyes. Those two things now, you really allow Coach Sark to unlock his system to its full capacity. Now you got the green dot. It's similar to what the telecommunication system between the quarterback and the coach. He no longer has to look over to the sideline and just use pictures or sort of keywords and code words, right? He's listening to the mastermind directly into his ear. So he's got that extra calming presence. But you have these two quarterbacks that the cerebral, they're just being cerebral in nature. It's allowing Coach Sark to really just go all in and unlock everything. And so you're going to see Arch Manning. There's going to be a package for him, and it won't take an injury to Quinn Ewers or I should say a blowout, and any like for or against Texas for you to see Arch Manning this year. It's going to happen just because of the level of preparation, the background that he's got, and the time that he's putting in trying to master the system. Coach Sark trusts him as well, and so I likened it to 2006, seeing Chris Leak and Tim Tebow. Arch Manning, in this case, being the more of the freshman Tim Tebow of that team, right? With Quinn as still, holding all the reins from mastering the offense and handling everything else in between. But Arch Manning, the bigger body, the little bit more fleet of foot athlete, right? So a little bit more physically imposing than Quinn Ewers is. So you're going to see both of those guys, like I said, regardless of injury or regardless of the outcome of the game. When the fourth quarter arrives. So
Landon Hollifield, content creator for Inside Texas, joins us here on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Landon, what is the most satisfying outcome of Texas joining the SEC going to be? Getting all that money, which Texas has a lot of, and they're very familiar with having a lot of money, or getting the chance to beat up on little bro Texas A&M once again?
Yeah, man. So that's definitely one of them. That Thanksgiving matchup is going to be, it's going to be very passionate, very, very prideful in a lot of different ways. But you put a rivalry of that nature, like just for Texas A&M, for example, that's been, and you sort of put it on ice for as long as it's been since their last matchup. It's going to be heated, it's going to be hated, and it's going to be a lot of fun, right? Texas A&M, regardless of how their season plays out, let's say it's just an average year at best for them. Texas has all the makings of, potentially being back into the college football playoff again. Guess what? Texas A&M, they'd love nothing more, even if they only have 1 or 2 or even 0 wins going into that game. Guess what? They get a chance to spoil Texas's postseason hopes back in the college football playoff. And then the same can be true on the other side of the coin, right? So getting this game back, man, if it's amazing, like it really is amazing to me that just the day-to-day interaction that I have. If I go out, if I step out and burn orange, and it doesn't matter where I go, I'm having a conversation by some A&M fan. They're gonna kind of elbow me a little bit, and they're gonna kind of let me hear it. And so you just instantly get that it's almost I don't even know how to describe it, man, but you just the passion is there. It's been a long time coming, and people are literally salivating for that game again. But the excitement, it's heading into the big boy leagues, man, and then having a chance to watch the true pageantry of the sport, where football is a way of life in the Southeastern Conference, and where it really does just mean more, quite literally, the slogan of the SEC, right? And then you add 2 programs of the caliber and the history, blue blood programs, let's call it what it is, of Texas and Oklahoma, putting them into the big leagues of the SEC, man, and then getting to watch Texas just sort of cultivate new rivalries, encounter new fan bases, see new cities, new sites, new traditions. That's what we love about college football more than anything, me personally, right? But I know that that's true for everybody across the country. It's the pageantry of the sport that makes it so much different. And man, I just can't wait to finally be a part of it. It's going to be a blast.
Landon, you do a lot of coverage in the NFL, specifically with the Cowboys being in Texas. Is there anything to make of the storylines or the narratives, if you will, of super low attendance in Oxnard, California? Obviously, here in the upstate of South Carolina, even though we're not in Texas, we still have a large majority or a large contingent of NFL fans who still pull for the Cowboys. But is there anything to make of there being a significant drop in attendance in training camp, and the people who are covering it talking about this team and this fan base being at an all-time low in terms of their lack of interaction in the offseason, lack of I don't want to call it just the Cowboys did. I don't want to say the Cowboys did nothing, but them for whatever reason feeling like they just didn't have to make any splash moves. Do you make anything of that, or do you think that's just a narrative that's not really true in your opinion?
So that's a loaded question, man. And once again, another good one. You guys are on top of it, man. It's you can call it disdain, you can call it apathy, you can call it lack of interest, whatever you want. There's definitely some truth to that. Since in my adult life, since I've been mature enough to really understand team building, roster construction, and just studying the sport, watching the All-22 film, trying to learn it and just expand my knowledge of the game. This is by far and away the most frustrated I've ever seen the Cowboys fan base, and myself included. I had an entire 16-week series on my YouTube channel. I called it the postmortem series, where I just kind of once a week did a video and discussed everything that there was to discuss, starting from the meltdown versus the Packers and all the way up until post-draft and leading up into camp. And so I've talked about everything, but the Oxnard thing, the lack of fan attendance, that's more to do, I will tell you, with it's more to do with the price of admission. Right? If you just go and give it a Google, right, they're actually charging fans now to come in and see, which is just, it's crazy to me, the distastefulness, or I guess the lack of feel, as I would like to call it. Feel ain't free, but it's definitely it's certainly not. You can't teach it. That's like a professional baseball term, I guess, that I picked up. But you got to have some feel, man. And Jerry Jones, it seems as if he didn't really have much of that. But I would definitely attribute the lack of attendance more towards them literally charging fans to come in and watch practices. Because in years past, to my knowledge, it had never been that way. Yeah. I've never been fortunate enough to be in Oxnard for training camp, but that's the people that have been around a lot longer than I have, the guys that I look up to, some of my colleagues, for lack of a better term here, that's what they're telling me. And so I'm riding with that. But the fan apathy is real, and there's a lot of frustrated fans who are ready to give in or give up, I should say, give up hope. But if you're one of those out there listening, and if you guys have, I don't know how we're doing on time here, but I've got a couple very quick ways to sort of let's just say soothe your soul in that regard.
Yeah, Landon, we'll give you a second here in just a second. I do want to bring this up. It's fascinating that's where the conversation went. Mm-hmm. If NFL fans are having issue with paying to get into practices, I saw an article last week about how multiple college football programs across the country, Georgia included, I specifically remember Georgia on the list. I don't remember who all was involved, but now they are charging fans to come in and watch practices in college so that they can use that money to fund their NIL efforts.
I was just about to say, somebody got to foot the NIL bill, right? Yeah.
I do want to ask you one quick question here, though, about Texas before we get back to the NFL. Please, it's easy to say anything short of going 12-0 is a disappointing season for Texas, but like with the competition elevated in the SEC, that's going to be really tough to achieve. 5 preseason top 25 teams on that schedule. In your mind, what minimum record satisfies Texas fans? And I understand there's a lot of nuance in there. It depends on who you lose to, how you lose to them, if you lose to anybody at all. But is it 12-0 or bust, or would Texas fans be ecstatic with a 10-2 season, first year in the SEC?
The latter part of that question, would they be ecstatic with a 10-2 season? The answer is unequivocally yes, because that 10-2 record with the strength of schedule that Texas is going to have playing and, leading off, not literally leading off, but week 2 going into Ann Arbor playing against the reigning national champion. If you're 10-2 with an SEC caliber schedule that features Georgia, Texas A&M, and Michigan, then you're going to have a legitimate case. And then with the brand that Texas brings, the money that they provide, that's always going to be in the discussion as well. But they're getting in the college football playoff if they win 10 games. Now, so let's expand upon that just a little bit, right? Going back to 2021, 5-7, Steve Sarkisian's first year. 2022 was 8-5, right? That's a 3-win jump. 2023, a year ago, another 4-win jump to 12 wins, 2 total losses. And then, you go and you put 11 guys into the NFL draft, which is a record for the program dating back to, I think, 1994 when they first expanded the NFL draft to 7, or I guess they shortened it to 7 rounds. So, but then you get to SEC Media Days and you hear coaches like Kirby Smart, Lane Kiffin, and Brian Kelly. They're all acknowledging without necessarily even being provoked. Like the media was catering to the Texas narrative, right? Because it's a hot topic with those 2 brands coming into their league. But they're all saying, yeah, Texas is the real deal. They're a legitimate conference title contender. And if you're a conference title contender in this conference, guess what? You're also a national title contender too. And another thing too, I want to acknowledge this as well, just so people don't necessarily try to accuse me of being overly biased, because the role that I have now in my new post-playing profession in this sports media business, as you two gentlemen are well aware of, right? You have to do the best that you can to remain as objective as possible. And I don't want to overlook Oklahoma in this whole discussion here, because Texas is taking the forefront. They were recency bias, I guess, if you want to call it that, right? The last team of the 2 to play in the college football playoff prior to making this jump. But let's not dismiss what had happened in the last, just say, 10 years, the dark decade of Texas, right? Oklahoma has dominated that game. Okay, I think they're 7-3 in the last 10 games and 10 matchups with Texas. They had 4 college football playoff appearances of their own to Texas's 1, and countless. I mean, I don't even know. I haven't done the numbers and the math, but more first-round picks, more NFL draft picks in total, and just a lot more victories. And so now Texas is the better team this year, and they will prove that on or when the season starts here in just 4 short weeks. But Oklahoma is they deserve a ton of credit too for what they've accomplished in the previous 10 years. But it's 2 teams coming into this SEC and not just one, and then Oklahoma, right? I just want to make sure, because I'm seeing that all over the place. It seems as if Oklahoma is being overlooked, and that if you're a Texas fan, that's probably the last thing that you want to do, right? Because yes, you played in the college football playoff last year, but guess what? One of the teams you didn't beat, Oklahoma. So, yeah, True. Man, it's. I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, but it's going to be
true. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to hear you say 7-3 in the last 10 years, something that you don't really think about Texas as being, as dominant as they were last year and as good as they should be. Hey, look, man, we're up against it, but if it's okay with you, let's do it again real soon. Appreciate your time and look forward to our next conversation.
Yes, sir. Salute, gentlemen. Appreciate you having me on. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. That's Landon Hollifield. Appreciate him coming on the program as well. Content creator for Inside Texas and host of Sports Below the Surface. We're going to keep it on the college football landscape. Coming up next, Diesel, we debut a brand new game today. And you, Diesel, get to decide how long the game goes. We'll find out what it is next. All right, I teased this earlier in the show as well as coming out of that last segment. We're playing a new game that may last one day. It may last 10 days. We don't know. It's up to Diesel. I'm going to give him some statistics, I guess you could say, some reasoning on what he should do. But here's the game. It's called Carson Beck versus. And that means versus. No one in particular. But the way the game works, Diesel, I will make a short segment of this every single day until you find a quarterback that you would rather have over Carson Beck. Basically, who would you rather have leading your team? I've told you I don't think Carson Beck's the best quarterback in the country, but many people do, right? Because of his team and who he played behind and the talent that he has. And I get all of that.
Okay.
But we're going to start easy. Every day it'll get a little more challenging.
So am I trying to see if I would rather have this quarterback if I was Georgia or if I was starting a neutral team?
A neutral team.
Okay.
You pick the quarterback. This is your guy. And again, if you pick the guy that I'm going to give you today, the game's over. Which is fine. It's okay. We got more to talk about. If not, we'll go every day until you find one that you do. So today's game of Carson Beck versus, again, I told you we're going to start somewhat easy, but this one's not just a super easy. This one does make you think a little bit. Today's matchup, Carson Beck versus Shedeur Sanders of Colorado, the quarterback who was at Jackson State 2 years now, his second year at Colorado. Diesel, the game could last one day or it could continue until tomorrow. What is going to happen? Is the game going to end or no?
No. Shedeur Sanders shows flashes of greatness, and I know that he's got it in him, right? Okay. We don't know for sure how good Shedeur Sanders is because he's playing behind subpar everything, right? He's playing behind a subpar line. He's playing behind subpar receivers, and we just don't know how great he can be. So I would rather have the known quantity of Carson Beck, who, by the way, throws a ton of passing yards and a ton of touchdowns against some of the best competition in the game, over somebody that I don't trust. I don't trust Shedeur Sanders. I trust Carson Beck. I mean, I'm looking at his, not even including the Florida State game because he was playing against, a triage unit.
Yeah.
But against Alabama,
JV team.
Against Alabama, he completed 73% of his passes. Against a top 20 Tennessee, he completed 80% of his passes. Against
I'm with you.
Top 10 Ole Miss, 72% of his passes. I mean, and he had 3 touchdowns against Tennessee, 2 against Ole Miss. He didn't have any touchdowns against Alabama, but they still only lost that game by 3.
It's true. So for a little comparison in 2023, Carson Beck last year, 302 of 417, which, by the way, as Diesel said, 72.4 completion percent. Pretty good. 3,941 yards last year. He was just so short, Diesel, of breaking 4,000 yards last year, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Shedeur Sanders last year, 3,230 yards, 27 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. So let's look at the yards. About 800 less for Shedeur. Touchdowns, he had 27. Carson had 24. Interceptions, Carson had 6. Shedeur had 3. I mean, maybe I can make a case here that you're wrong. Maybe I can say, hey, Diesel, Shedeur's the better quarterback. Again, I wanted to give you one that was a little bit easy but not too difficult to start the game of Carson Beck versus. But I think that this one does at least make you think a little bit about it. Like, this one isn't just a no way Jose, is it?
Well, I mean, look, this is a stat here that kind of confuses me a little bit.
Okay.
I would assume that Carson Beck doesn't throw the ball as much as Shedeur Sanders by a considerable amount.
You would think, right?
Because, I mean, I'm thinking here that Georgia has a superior run game. They have a superior offensive line. They're able to lean on that element of the game to take some of the pressure off of Carson Beck as a quarterback. The shocking thing is their number of attempts. And you got to think this is over the course of a season.
Yeah.
It's only a difference of 13 attempts.
Wow. 13.
Shedeur Sanders attempted 13 more passes than Carson Beck. So I'm thinking, okay,
goodness,
maybe they have more touchdowns, or maybe Shedeur Sanders had more touchdowns because he threw the ball a ton more because he didn't have a line.
Yeah.
He didn't have a defense. We also got to consider the fact that he did that in the Big 12.
Yeah, true.
Where there's no defense. So putting up massive numbers. Were they playing the Big 12 last year? They play in the Pac-12. It's so hard to keep track. They played in the Pac-12 last year. Again, still no defense.
Yeah.
They didn't play any defense in the Pac-12 last year or ever. So you put up gaudy numbers. You're kind of expected to put up gaudy numbers.
So what you're saying is the game will continue at least one more day.
Will continue.
All right.
When we come back, Cole, we're going to stay with college football, and we're going to start talking how many losses can some of these teams afford to take. We were talking earlier with Landon Hollifield about the losses Texas is likely to incur because they're playing against tougher competition. Well, let's look and see what some of the top contenders can afford to lose. That's next on the Fan Upstate. Cole, with the college football playoff expanding, we all hoped for more parity in college football. And I think we're going to build in some of that parity as things go along. Obviously, it's going to take a couple of years to settle into the new playoff structure. And then ultimately,
then they'll change it.
Then they'll change it, right? Ultimately, I think we're going to end up in a place where we have a relative lack of parity again a few years down the line. And ultimately, we're going to end up expanding again. I'm looking at some interesting ratings that our friend and frequent guest of the show, Kelly Ford, put out on his social media. He's got 5 teams, Cole, that have a 70% chance to make the college football playoff. 70% chance. By the way, he's got Georgia at a 90% chance to make this thing.
I'd say that's pretty accurate.
I mean, like, basically nothing can happen to derail Georgia on this season, short of maybe Carson Beck going down. Ohio State and Oregon both are at an 80% chance to make this thing. Alabama, Texas, and Penn State, 70% chance to make this thing. Then it drops to 50% for LSU, 40% for Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Florida State, Missouri, Clemson, and Ole Miss, all given a 30% chance. If you're a Clemson fan, that ought to sting.
30% chance is what you're saying?
30% chance. I mean, they're saying Florida State's got a better chance. No, Florida State's got an equal chance of making the college football playoff. I mean,
I don't know about that.
When you look at how we all predict the ACC schedule plays out, we predict seeing, in all likelihood, either Clemson or Florida State in the ACC championship game. But it's hard to say now, especially now that we don't have divisions in the ACC, and we could see a rematch of Clemson, Florida State in the ACC championship game if they ended up being the best 2 teams in the league. It's hard to not see one of those teams making the college football playoff, but being given only a 30% chance to make this thing, Cole, like that, Clemson fans, y'all were a virtual lock year in and year out just a couple of seasons ago. So to see that fall, to see your chances drop that drastically ought to upset you.
This is bad radio, but where is that at on his? I'm on his website.
It's on his. He posted that on his Twitter a couple of days ago.
Okay. So Clemson,
he posts some really great graphics.
Yeah, he does, and I love his projections on his website, k4ratings.com. 30% chance is mind-boggling to me because Miami, you would think with that schedule would have a higher percentage than Clemson, because they avoid Clemson and NC State.
Kelly is equally down on Miami as you are.
Oh, is he really?
I mean, you look at the ease. He's looking at that ease of schedule, Cole, and still predicting losses in there.
Yeah,
that's going to eliminate Miami from the college football playoff discussion before things even get that far.
And I agree with what Madcraft says. 30% is ridiculous for Florida State and Clemson. Miami should be around that number. Florida State and Clemson should be 50% or higher.
What I find interesting about that is when you juxtapose it with his mulligans list. This is a list of schools and the number of oopsies they get over the course of a season.
I love that. Oopsies.
Yeah, you oopsie, you screw up and lose a game that you're not supposed to lose.
Had those.
Yeah, they have. They haven't still made the college football playoff.
Yep.
The problem specifically for Clemson there, remember 30% chance to make the playoff. And remember, all this is based on returning statistics and running the numbers and things like that. He has Clemson as you get 0 mulligans. You cannot lose a game.
That
I think is what puts Clemson at that 30% chance. That's what explains that 30% shot to make this thing. Clemson cannot lose a game if they want to make the college football playoff.
So all right, so let's say this. There are 12 games on their schedule. Let's say they lose to Georgia but win out. That would mean they beat Florida State. That'd mean they beat NC State, and you're 11-1. Let me tell you this. There is no way you can convince me right here on August the 5th that if Clemson finishes 11-1, they're not making the playoff. That's crazy to me, isn't it? Dude, what am I missing here?
He's also looking at Georgia, giving them a 90% chance to make the college football playoff, and says they could still lose 3 games. They could lose 3 games and still make the college football playoff.
Lose all of them.
I mean, I'm looking at this Georgia schedule, Cole. Ranked opponents, number 19 Clemson, number 23 Kentucky, number 9 Alabama, number 4 Texas, number 6 Ole Miss, number 16 Tennessee. And like, yeah, I mean, they could very easily drop the game at Alabama because that's a top 10 game on the road.
I think so.
And certainly that happens. That doesn't really affect their playoff hopes at all. They could lose at number 4 Texas.
God.
That's when I start to disagree with Kelly. If you're now losing to 2 top 10 teams in a month.
Yeah, that's tough.
Now remember, it's not like a calendar month, but it basically is. It's September 28th, October 19th. If you lose 2 games in a month on the road at top 10 opponents, the punditry starts looking at that and says, they don't have what it takes to win big games.
They're
on
not
the road.
The same team they were.
Right.
You know, if you lose 2 of those games in that month time frame,
their 3 hardest games. They have to go on the road and play Ole Miss in a couple of weeks after that. So
listen, I get that their schedule's brutal, but I just don't know that. 2 games maybe.
Yeah.
3 games, they ain't making the playoff with 3 losses.
There's no way if you lose on the road at Alabama, on the road at Texas, and on the road at Ole Miss, you can convince anyone that is a team good enough to go win a national championship.
You lose on the road at Ole Miss, and I don't want to say the dynasty's over, but come on.
If they do that, the only way, and I don't know, I don't even know if this mathematically could happen. The only way is they somehow limp into the SEC championship and win the game.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it would take a much smarter man than I to look at schedules and figure out a path where Georgia gets into the SEC championship game with 3 losses. I mean, you get there, you clearly still have a roster of talented guys.
Yeah, you do.
But
still, you got to win.
That's just, you could even lose by a field goal in all 3 of those games. And you couldn't convince me that that's a team good enough to go out and beat the best teams in the country.
No, I agree with you.
Because in all likelihood, if that happens, those 3 teams are also making the college football playoff.
Sure.
So now you'd be the last place team in that conference. What I really also find interesting, he gives Oregon and Alabama 2 mulligans. Each one of those schools can lose 2 games and still make the playoff. He gives Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, LSU, Notre Dame, Florida State, Kansas State, and Iowa 1 mulligan. So Florida State could lose, for example, to Clemson, middle of the season, still get into the college football playoff. Their margin of error gets a little slimmer, but they could still lose 1 game and get into the college football playoff. What I find fascinating also that Kelly Ford put out is his list of teams that need a big-time upset to get into the playoff. So this is not in any particular order, I would love to find out what we can look at these schedules and see what game do we think they need to upset in to guarantee their spot in.
Just to get in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Miami, Tennessee, Michigan, Southern Cal, SMU, Liberty, TCU, NC State, Kansas, Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech, UNC, Boise State, UT San Antonio, and App State.
So let's start with the very first one, Miami. I don't think they need an upset win. If you consider Florida State that win, maybe so. So we talked about this earlier. We touched on it briefly. 2024 Miami. You're at Florida. That game will be close, in my opinion, but I do think Miami wins.
I don't think that's an upset.
I don't either.
Yeah,
I don't
either.
On
the road at Florida, as down as that program is, that's not an upset.
Okay, then the next 5 you can take off. A&M, or Florida A&M, Ball State, USF, VT, Virginia Tech, Cal. Then you have a bye week. Louisville's going to be good. It might be a tricky game at Louisville. Then you have Florida State. So 2 weeks in a row, you have Louisville, Florida State, Duke, Georgia Tech, a bye, Wake Forest, and Syracuse.
Remember that Miami is preseason number 24.
So Kelly Ford on those ratings, Diesel is saying they'd have to beat Florida State, I guess.
Yeah, you'd have to look at that. I mean, if you get to that point, Cole, and you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-0. If you're 7-0 and you're Miami against an awful September schedule. Florida A&M, Ball State, USF. You're not getting any style points for winning those games.
No.
I mean, maybe like 15 years ago, USF, you get a little bit of respect for that, but not now. So really at that point, you're 1, 2, 3, 4-0 because A&M, Ball State, Florida A&M, not Texas A&M, Florida A&M, Ball State, USF don't count.
Sure.
So you're 4-0 at that point. Do you really think that you've jumped from 25 to a minimum 12?
No. At
that point,
not even close.
So
Not even
I
close.
do agree with Kelly in saying you have to beat Florida State. Beating Louisville, and who knows what Louisville's going to be at that time. That's late October. But you have to beat Florida State if you want to get into the college football playoff.
You do. You have to beat them. And I guess to his point, that's the one game that for Miami is the game they have to win because
you can go 11-1 and not get in.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Their strength of schedule is not good outside of that game. So, yeah, they're going to have to win one. Who are a few other teams on that list?
Tennessee. So Tennessee's got to win one.
Okay.
So Tennessee's got NC State neutral site.
Not a gimme. That's going to be a good game.
It's not a gimme, but I don't think that impresses anyone.
Okay. That's going to be a good game, by the way.
We'll do who was it that sang a song that don't impress me much? Shania Twain. We're doing our Shania Twain. If you're Tennessee, do you have to upset Oklahoma to get into the playoff?
Okay, I'm looking at their schedule.
Alabama, October 19th, Kentucky, at Georgia. I mean, you don't have to upset Georgia to get in.
Okay, so you're saying, let's play it like this. You lose Oklahoma.
Tennessee's preseason 16.
So you lose to Oklahoma, and then let's call it you lost to Georgia because that's not that's a loss.
Oklahoma is essentially a peer school at this point, being 14-16 in the preseason rankings.
So that Diesel would give them 2 losses. So you'd be 10-2 with wins over Chattanooga, NC State. Let me read the big ones. NC State, Arkansas, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Vandy. Yeah, you know what? That's a fascinating conversation because they're going to be 10-2 unless they just lay an egg. I mean, who else? Find one on that schedule. Who else are they going to lose to? It'd have to be NC State, wouldn't it? If you say they have to have 3 losses, maybe Kentucky, but I don't see them losing to Kentucky and Knoxville at a night game. No, they're going to beat Kentucky. Mississippi State's not any good. They're at 10-2. I don't know, man. That's going to be close. 12-team playoff.
They can have good-looking losses against Alabama and Georgia, and that not affect them at all.
I think they get in at 10-2.
You think so?
At 10-2, those are not bad losses. I don't think the Oklahoma loss would sit.
Imagine Vol Nation losing their minds. Not our Tolo caller Vol Nation, but Vol Nation Tennessee fans.
Yeah.
Imagine them losing their minds, 10-2, not getting into the college football playoff.
Picture let me tell you this. It would be fantastic.
Yeah.
For conversation,
the Tennessee Navy is going to take some port city. I don't know how they're going to do it.
That would be fantastic. However, a 10-2 Tennessee team, I don't know. That's a good team. Like if you go 10-2 and your only losses are Oklahoma and Georgia, and somehow, some way, I don't think they will. If they go 11-1, obviously we're having an entirely different conversation here. They're getting in, but man, that's fascinating.
The crazy thing, NC State, I think, could get in. They need an upset, according to Kelly. They need to get in. NC State, they could upset Tennessee and get in. I think that Tennessee win would be impressive enough on a neutral site when people always look at NC State as that program that doesn't have the depth to go on the long haul. If you could beat Tennessee, albeit early,
That's
and-
early
and, yeah.
game. NC State has, and talking about big games, Tennessee, Clemson. Oh, God.
Is that it?
That's it. North Carolina at the end of the season, but North Carolina's going to take a step back, and that one's
North Carolina's probably expected to be a 7-win
That's what
team,
I'm saying. Oh,
8-win
God.
team tops.
I haven't looked at this schedule in depth. We were talking about the Missouri schedule a few weeks back and how, how favorable it was for Missouri. Listen to this. NC State in 2024, Western Carolina. That's a win.
Yeah.
Tennessee at Bank of America. You never know. You never know. Okay, let's give them a loss there.
Yep.
La Tech, loss. Clemson, who knows? I mean, they've done.
La Tech's a win. You said loss.
I'm sorry, La Tech's a win. Clemson is the who knows game. I think it's a loss, but you never know. If Cade Klubnik and the Tigers aren't playing well, they could beat. They've done it before, right? NIU.
And we're making all of these assumptions, not including an ACC championship game.
Correct. Wake Forest, Syracuse, Cal, Stanford, Duke, Georgia Tech, North Carolina.
Yawn.
That's what I'm saying.
You can lose to Tennessee, beat Clemson, and you're in.
Oh, yeah, 100%. If you go 11-1 and have a win over Clemson, as long as Clemson doesn't crap the bed and make it look like a worse loss than it is, yeah, absolutely.
At what point of the season is that? What's the date on that?
The Clemson game?
Yeah.
The Clemson game with NC State is early, September 21st.
That's the problem for NC State is their two big opponents are early in the season. They better hope to hell that they get into the ACC championship game and win that thing.
If not,
because there is so much time, but the committee will forget all about those games.
Sure.
They'll
100%.
forget all about them, and they'll start sliding down the list, and they'll be in that range of 15 to 18, looking in from the outside.
Wow.
They've got to upset one of those games. I mean, I think you upset Tennessee and look impressive doing it. You can kind of punch your ticket, assuming you lose to Clemson.
But if they were to lose in the ACC championship, even with one of those wins and get back to 2 losses, I don't think they're in. I don't think they're in.
No, that would be a team that has had a long time between impressive wins.
Correct.
Long time. And they'll say, look, yeah, they're beating the tar out of Duke and Wake Forest down the stretch, but what does that really tell us? Does that tell us that NC State is worthy of going up against Alabama and Notre Dame and Michigan and schools like that in the playoff?
It's fascinating, and I'll say this. I love Kelly Ford's rankings because they're not Kelly Ford making rankings just to make rankings.
These are statistical analytics.
They do have real analytics, to your point, that go into them. And it's not just a made-up poll, right? The coaches poll came out early. It's not a made-up poll.
Yeah, he's not big game boomer.
Right. Unfortunately. But it's fast. I'll say this. The one thing, though, from the entire conversation is that Clemson and Florida State only have a 30% chance, according to his ratings, to get into the playoffs. That's what blows my mind. 30% chance. I think for Florida State, it's got to be around 50.
Well, and you look at his projections. He's projecting Clemson wins 5 ACC games.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. If you win 5, yeah, your percentage of getting in obviously is very low, but still, that's to be fair.
I mean, winning. Nobody has a projection of winning 8 games. I mean, he's talking about the statistical probabilities of winning the number of games, and Clemson is right there with Florida State. Excuse me, not 5, 6 games, 6 ACC wins for Florida State and Clemson. The statistically highest likelihood outcome.
Wow. That's fascinating. And by the way, I said a minute ago, excuse me, the USA Today coaches poll did come out earlier today, and this was the preseason coaches poll. I believe Diesel did mention it in the Daily Wires. Georgia received 46 first-place votes. Ohio State, Diesel, received 7 first-place votes.
Wow.
Making up the
big drop.
Pretty big drop. Making up the top 10, Oregon 3, Texas 1. Texas 4. They received 1 first-place vote, which is to me, kind of crazy.
Is Landon a voter in this AP?
He may be, but
he's very bullish on his Texas Longhorns.
yeah, but you would think I thought they'd get more than one. And then you have Alabama 5, Ole Miss 6, Notre Dame 7, Michigan 8, who got 1 vote, Penn State 9, Florida State 10, rounding out the top 10. Clemson comes in at 14 in the preseason USA Today coaches poll. No Gamecocks, in case you were looking for them, Diesel. They are not there, unfortunately. Panthers fans, I don't know if this is good news, no news. How do you feel about this? I want to hear from you on the other side. Diesel teased it in the Daily Wires, a little injury on the Panthers front with a former Gamecock. We'll talk about it. Well, the Panthers, Diesel, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
I was going to say, in your face, North Korea. We just beat North Korea in women's Greco-Roman wrestling in like 60 seconds.
I had that
kicked her communist ass all the way back to North Korea. USA. See, this is when you start
Here you
getting
go.
into
Here's
the
the
Olympics.
replay.
She's rolling her like a crocodile.
Oh, God. The legs. She just went right for the legs. That's terrible. What kind of wrestling was that again?
Greco-Roman.
See, you're talking Spanish now. You're talking Spanish. Not a wrestling guy.
But it's Greek.
Again, Greek. You're talking Greek.
It's all Greek to me, right?
It's all Greek to me because I don't know it and I don't follow wrestling. I will watch it though. I mean, I don't hate. We're talking real wrestling. Yes,
wrestling, not wrestling.
That's correct. Real wrestling, I will watch. That was women's, and I thought it was a man because. Never mind. Anyways, Panthers. You talked to Anish Shroff.
We did.
What was that?
Thursday, Carolina Panthers Fan Fest.
You and Roberto talked to Anish. Before we get into Xavier Leggett, I did not get to hear Anish, obviously, as I was in Nicaragua. But what did you take? I mean, did he drop anything that Panthers fans were just left clinging on to, or is there just kind of same old right now with the Spartanburg-less training camp?
Yeah, kind of same old, honestly, with Anish.
Yeah.
I think he's optimistic and measured this year. I think he told us he predicted them winning like 9 games last year.
Cool.
So obviously Anish was really bought into the Bryce Young hype. This year, it seems as if he is much more measured in his approach, which is good. He gets to watch the work that they're putting in on the daily basis.
Yeah.
And so Anish is clearly optimistic about their ability to improve their win total over last year, but he's not, betting the farm on it that they're going to win 10 games and go to the playoffs.
You know what? It's interesting because last year with a coach, in my opinion, less superior than Dave Canales, I would have thought more like 4 or 5. And then you get Dave Canales this year, much upgrade from Frank Wright. You would think maybe 6 or 7. However, they won 2 last year.
He's definitely high on the vertical integration, the alignment of the pieces that are now in place. I mean, Dave Canales is a guy who has coached quarterbacks like Bryce Young multiple occasions and has done the right things with them. He was just talking about the lack of integration and the lack of alignment with Frank Reich, who is a very different kind of quarterback himself and has coached different kinds of quarterbacks over his career. He talked about this desire to experiment and make a coaching staff of odd couple coaches from all over different styles, and thought, hey, mismatch. You bring in a West Coast offensive guy. You bring in a stand behind the center, take a snap from under center type of guy like Frank Reich, and they'll just figure it out, right? It'll be an explosion of ideas. It'll be a supernova of ideas, and they will somehow meld this thing into something that really works. And it just didn't happen that way.
It's interesting with Xavier Leggett, and I heard Rob Brown and Lonzo talking about it this morning with his injury, where we do have some updates. As of an hour ago, rookie wide receiver Xavier Leggett's MRI showed no fractures in his foot. It's a good sign, and he will be listed as day-to-day. Now, from the on-the-field standpoint, Diesel, it's just a starting point. It's still early August, right? However, Joe Pearson, Joe is with, I want to make sure, he's with The Athletic. Joe wrote 39 minutes ago that it's just a starting point, but Xavier Leggett, however you want to say it, has been listed as second team behind Jonathan Mingo on Panthers' first depth chart of the summer. So I guess that's where my mind goes now. If he's healthy, if he's good to go, you go and you take a guy like Xavier Leggett in the first round. Where do you, NFL fans, Panthers fans, Diesel, where do you see this going in terms of the depth chart, because Jonathan Mingo right now is listed at 1, Leggett at 2. I just, in my mind, I think to myself, if you went and you got a guy in the first round, at some point this season, you would want him to be a starter. You would want him to be an impact guy. And I know if he's listed on the depth chart as a 2, he can still see the field, but a 2's a 2, a 1's a 1. And Jonathan Mingo will obviously see a lot more snaps than Xavier Leggett if he starts the season as the 1. But I just wonder if Panther fans, Diesel, would be upset if we got to the halfway point of the season and Xavier Leggett was still the 2 behind Jonathan Mingo. I mean, you did go get a first-round pick for this guy, right?
Yeah, I still don't understand that move that the Carolina Panthers made. Who was sitting at was it the Chiefs, right?
Chiefs, I
Chiefs
believe,
were
right?
sitting at 32. Were the Chiefs going to go draft Xavier Leggett? No, I mean, I don't understand the move there to get up into the first round to get Xavier Leggett. I mean, if you're going to do that, I certainly was looking at a guy like Xavier Worthy as probably a better option for the Carolina Panthers. Of course, it all depends on the offense and what the coaching staff wants to do, and maybe having a guy that can just take the top off of the defense like Xavier Worthy could do isn't necessarily what they need. Maybe they look at Bryce Young's ability to throw downfield and say, hey, we get this guy who's this fast. We put him out there 20, 25, 30 yards down the field. Bryce Young's accuracy starts to go down. So we don't necessarily need a guy like that right now at this time. I mean, the only thing I can think is Jonathan Mingo's got the extra year of eligibility on him, right? I mean, he was a second-round pick. He was 39th pick last year to the Panthers. So, I mean, really, what's the difference between pick 39 and pick 32? They're essentially the same kind of player. They're essentially the same height. Xavier Leggett has him by an inch, and he's like 5-6 pounds heavier than Jonathan Mingo is. So I think they have to be basing this off of, and this is something even Steve Smith told us, the work that Jonathan Mingo has done. A lot of people are really excited about Jonathan Mingo's ability to flourish this year. And maybe it's a good thing that you're not putting a ton of pressure on Xavier Leggett as a rookie in the NFL.
So Texter says, this text from the 327, if the guard center guard combo isn't fixed, it'll be another bad losing season, no matter what or who you got coaching or play scheming. Talking about the Panthers. Yeah, obviously offensive line was an issue last season. But going back to that, to your point about Leggett, I do understand what you and Steve Smith, I understand that. You do. You want your guys, your ones, you want them to be an integral part of the offense. And if the Panthers have found that guy, maybe you don't have to put as much pressure on Leggett, but let's not put Leggett on the back burner just because your ones are actually being ones. Like, your ones weren't ones last year, right? So now what you're telling me is, Panthers, hey, your ones are becoming ones now, and you went and got a 1, but you're going to make him a 2. I'm really high on Leggett. Leggett, I know he didn't have a great career. He had a good year last year, but if he's a 1, let him be a 1. Let him go fight it out. Maybe by the start of the season, he will be a 1. It's just Mingo, he better show it early, because if he doesn't show it early, and I'm Dave Canales and company, Leggett's definitely going to get a crack at it. And Texter, I understand you. Texter says we're forgetting Leggett was a literal 1-year wonder at Carolina. And 327, I understand you. I hear you. He was. It was 1 year. But there's also plenty of examples in the NFL of guys who broke out late in college and had a good NFL career. So we can't hold that against them.
And it depends on, where you're getting your depth chart from. Currently listed on ESPN.com, Carolina Panthers depth chart. They got Deontay Johnson, who is really expected to be good for this team this year. Adam Thielen and Xavier Leggett as your starting 3. Xavier Leggett currently listed as questionable.
Yeah.
Jonathan Mingo would be the number 2 wide receiver behind Deontay Johnson.
Well, it's interesting. They've got, I guess it's a good problem to put a bow on it. I guess it's a good problem for the Panthers if you start having, to my point earlier, if you're ones, start acting like and playing like ones. That's a good problem. However, last year, as Panther fans, you were relying on Adam Thielen, right? And that's not a good recipe. That's not good. He's not a star receiver in the league. He's not a guy that you can build your receiving core around. So, yeah, it's about time the ones become ones. If that's the case, good for them because, they're a year late. So hopefully they will be. And I know they have a few new additions, and I get that. But they need – the Panthers' receiving room as a whole needs a drastic boost, Diesel. They need a big boost, need a big improvement in 2024.
I'd be willing to bet that a lot of these positions, barring injury, are really up for competition because – I mean, you got to see who your quarterback kind of vibes with the best. And you got a lot of guys who are pretty good. Yeah. You don't have anyone that's a proven absolute stud. So outside of Adam Thielen. Mm-hmm. So on the outside, you got to find those guys that Bryce Young has the best connection with and who run the best routes the way he wants them run.
No, I agree. It's fascinating. I hope that this problem continues in a good way for the Panthers. What I mean is I hope that these guys, these receivers in particular, continue to improve their game so that there is a problem, that there is a Dave Canales at some point has to stop and say, okay, we got all these guys that are really playing well during the preseason. It's going to make my job tougher to name the ones. That's the way it should be compared to last year where Jimmy and Joe could have been ones, right?
Yeah, you would hope that nobody on this team's job is safe, right? I mean, I even said last year Bryce Young's job shouldn't be safe. Andy Dalton was playing better than Bryce Young. Well, he's out. When we come back, Cole, we'll take one more quick whip around the sports world and our Daily Wires. A lot we didn't get to the first time we did our Daily Wires 2 hours ago, so let's catch up on that next right here on the Fan Upstate. Whipping around the sports world, so much happening. We haven't had a chance to get to everything today. We call this segment Our Daily Wires. Yeah, this is the buzz happening out there. Jim Harbaugh read a prepared statement from Chargers camp today. Of course, this is all coming after some huge revelations about Michigan and the cheating scandal. He said, quote, "Never lie, never cheat, never steal. I was raised with that lesson. I have raised my family on that lesson. I have preached that lesson to the teams that I've coached. No one is perfect. If you stumble, you apologize and you make it right. Today, I do not apologize. I did not participate, was not aware nor complicit in those said allegations." So back to work and attacking with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
You know, I like that response, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's gone from deny to who the F do you think you are? Leave me alone with this.
Right. He didn't do it.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah, this scandal is getting nasty, but the truth is, Cole, it's already been adjudicated by the NCAA. They found nothing that they could go after. They are not going to reopen this thing.
Ugh.
The Braves lost yesterday to the Miami Marlins 7-0. That's what's sick. The
Yeah,
Marlins
that's true.
suck and are 6 games now back in the NL East. It's not out of reach. They still have a lot of games against the Phillies down the stretch. So winning the division is not out of reach, though I don't think for Atlanta Braves fans that ought to be your end-all be-all goal for the season. The medal count from Paris is now, as such, Team USA trails China by 1 gold medal, but we lead overall. We are the best at coming in second and third. Just the absolute best at it.
That's not a good thing.
30 silver medals to China's 18, 28 bronzes to France's 18, but we're 1 medal back in the golds. I'd have to look and see what events are coming up next week. There's still a week of competition left.
Still a good bit.
And so there's still a lot of time and room for the USA.
China,
can't lose to China.
That'd be a bad look. They make our phones and we lose to them in the Olympics. I mean, come on.
Let's see. The Williams-Brice hosted an international soccer match between Manchester United and Liverpool, and over 77,000 people packed into the stadium for that. So huge showing for football in America. I wonder if that's the largest attendance for a soccer game in America ever.
It could be up there, but I'll also say this. I might be wrong on this, but I cannot recall Williams-Brice hosting a soccer event. I mean, I'll have to check with some sources, but that was an incredible crowd on Saturday. And you asked me earlier in the show if I'd go. Yeah, I think just to experience it, I would go. I don't know if our co-part Rob Brown, who loves soccer, did he go? Do you know? We need to ask him if he went.
No, Rob was in Atlanta this weekend.
Oh, so no, he didn't go.
No, that does not rank. Well, God, it doesn't even rank in the top 20.
Oh, man. Don't even tell me.
Doesn't even rank in the top 20. 2014, Manchester United and Real Madrid played at Michigan Stadium. 109,000 people packed into Michigan Stadium for that game.
That's nuts, man.
Yep.
That's a lot.
Around the NFL tweeted that Brandon Ayuk more likely to be traded than sign an extension with the 49ers. So that is a very, very good sign for whatever team out there is looking for a star wide receiver. Brandon Ayuk,
that's big,
likely to be traded, more likely to be traded than sign an extension.
Come to Texas, man.
Come to Carolina.
Well, that's true.
The Panthers don't have that kind of money. They can't afford to pay him. Let's see. Tom Kim, by virtue of not medaling at the Olympics, has to now go do compulsory military service in his home country of South Korea.
Is it bad that I laugh at that?
The pressure on that putt. I mean, Tom Kim is used to putting for, hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million. I don't know has Tom Kim ever won a major?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so he's used to putting for a lot of cash.
Imagine this:
a lot of money on the line.
Jim Nantz on the mic. Tom Kim lines it up. Let's turn the volume down so we can get serious. Tom Kim lines it up in my best Jim Nantz voice. The putt wins a medal and secures him from having to go serve his country and maybe putting his life on the. I mean, the pressure. That's unbelievable. I've never heard of such. What's that? The heartbeat?
Yeah.
I mean, really? That's what it sounds like. I thought you were doing the Wolf of Wall Street. I thought that's what you were doing at first.
Michael Phelps told Pat McAfee.
That's great. So good.
Love it.
Sorry.
Michael Phelps told Pat McAfee that he wants a, quote, one and done, lifetime ban for anyone who tests positive for doping.
Ooh.
You're not going to do a lot of drugs and beat my record, says Michael Phelps. Vikings wide receiver Jordan Addison was charged with DUI and has a hearing on October 7th. Recall, he was found asleep at the wheel of his luxury car, a Rolls Royce, blocking a lane of I-105 westbound near LAX. How do you have a driver's license out of that? After
No
that?
bueno.
And he was charged. And how is that just 2 misdemeanors?
I'd be in jail. I'd be under the jail.
What?
Common people like us be under the jail.
Simone Biles finished her last event at the Olympics with a silver in the floor exercise. She won 4 medals at these games. Rebecca Andrade from Brazil became the first gymnast to ever beat Simone Biles in a floor final in an international competition. Huge.
How about that? Huge.
Huge.
As Diesel said a lot
Really
better than I
big.
can. Really big.
Beautiful.
All right, coming up tomorrow, Gary Stokin, CEO of the Peach Bowl. He'll join us and a lot more coming your way right here on the Fan Upstate.